Story 1. My mother is ruining my marriage, and I want to get rid of her. I read it often but needed to make an account different from my main. My marriage is seriously on the rocks, and although I've browsed here before, I never thought I'd have to post one day, but here we are. I'm 36M, and my wife is 28F. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6, and have a 1-year-old daughter who is the light of my life. My wife is an amazing mother and partner. My own mother, on the other hand, is absolutely ridiculous, and my wife has made me realize over time that my relationship with her is not healthy. My mom tries to control everything, including our wedding, which I convinced my wife to suck it up and go with my mom's ideas. She is still resentful of me for it. Passive-aggressive behavior on my mother's part, basically since we started dating, has made my wife absolutely hate her. I'll admit I haven't been as firm with my mom as I should have been in the past. This brings us to yesterday. Our wedding anniversary was last night. We're a little tight on money right now, being new parents, and our jobs are not fantastic, so I suggested that a family friend watch our daughter. I buy us a nice bottle of wine, and we cook dinner and just relax. I could tell my wife was disappointed that we couldn't do anything bigger or better, but she agreed this was the best choice, and we settled to both be home from work at 6 p.m. I was headed home from work when I got a call from my mother asking me to come over because it was an emergency. I asked her what type of emergency it was, and she just started crying frantically and begging me to come over. It was already 5:30 p.m., but I live in a low-volume traffic area, so I figured I would stop by and calm my mom down before I met my wife. When I got to my mother's house, she was literally sitting on the couch, having a glass of wine and watching TV. I was livid. She was so calm, too. Not the frantic monster I was speaking to on the phone. I started pressing about what the emergency was and reminded her that this was the night of my wedding anniversary. She said she had some house tasks for me to do that, in my opinion, she was 100% capable of doing herself. Things like washing the dishes, watering her houseplants, cleaning the gutters, etc., so definitely not emergency material. But she guilted me into doing them. She was literally screaming at me at one point that I was a bad son. I texted my wife, letting her know that I was going to be late because I was at my mom's house. She didn't respond to my text. Before I knew it, it was 7:30 p.m. My mom kept trying to put more tasks on me, but I put my foot down and let her know that I needed to get home. When I finally got home to my wife, she wasn't there. I was worried, so I texted and called her many times. No response. I was able to track her phone and found out that she was at her parents' house. They don't live far, around 20 minutes away. She finally got back at 11 p.m., and as I greeted her with a glass of champagne, she told me to save it for myself because she wanted a divorce. I was shocked and started breaking down. I asked her why, and she said that tonight was the final straw in a long list of things, that I've always put my mother first. She said that she expected today, of all days, to be our one time together, but even my mom was able to intervene on our wedding anniversary. I asked her what I could do, begged her to go to counseling. She is refusing. I asked her if there is someone else. She said that someone else is herself and that it's time for her to start working on herself and stop worrying about me being able to put my mother first. She has since moved into the guest bedroom in our house and hasn't talked to me much this morning. I tried to kiss her on the way out to drop off our daughter before work, and she just moved out of my way. So how do I save this sinking ship? I'm committed to doing everything for my wife to improve this, but she says that this is past fixing. I'm at a complete loss. I'm worried that she will see, or already has seen, a divorce lawyer, and I'd like to stop this in its tracks before it goes too far. I flared this as "give it to me straight" because I just need people to be as honest as possible with me right now. I know I messed up, but I also need to know how to fix this. Update 1. The post has been locked, but I'm trying to read through each comment the best as I can. As far as I can tell, I really need to man up, get therapy, and give my wife some space. Some of the comments are brutally honest, but that's fine because that's what I needed. I've got a lot of work to do on myself and this relationship. Update 2. My post was locked yesterday. I was able to give a small update at the end, but I thought I'd give a larger one here. First, I just want to say thanks for everyone who took the time to respond. Some of the responses were brutally honest, but I did tag the flares, "give it to me straight," so that makes sense. 1. Some people were commenting that me asking if there was somebody else that my wife was seeing was inappropriate. I really don't see how it was inappropriate, but to each their own, and my wife definitely thought it was inappropriate too, and was one of the tipping point comments that made her move into the guest room. I know I said I'd give her space, but the conflict was killing me, so yesterday when she got back from work, I knocked on the guest room door and tried to get her to come down to the kitchen to talk to me, but she was still refusing to talk about all of this until she was ready. I asked her when she'd be ready, and she just shut the door in my face. 2. Late last night, my mom showed up unannounced, which is unfortunately something she does, and my wife answered the door. I could hear my mom asking my wife how our anniversary was. My wife called for me to come down and handle my mom, her exact words, and my mom started interrogating her as to what handle means. By the time I got down there, ready to defuse the situation, it was already too late. My wife had poked the bear, and my mom was laying the verbal smack down. I asked my wife what she said to my mom. Stupid, I know. And she just went up to the guest room and slammed the door. I finally realized what was going on and asked my mom to leave, but she was refusing. I had to threaten to call the police, and then she finally left. 3. This morning, my wife packed her bags, a bag for my daughter, and left for her parents' house. I was surprised that she didn't even tell me beforehand. I was able to stop her and ask her what was going on as she was headed out of the door, and she said she's had enough of the verbal abuse, that she's ready to find a partner that will stick up for her and her family. She said that I will always put my mother first, and last night was an example of that this relationship cannot be salvaged, and she will be seeing a divorce lawyer ASAP. As a last-ditch effort, I asked her what I could do to fix this. She just shook her head at me, and then she left. I'm a mess. I've lost everything meaningful to me within the span of 48 hours. I keep calling and texting her and getting no response back. I called one of my buddies to tell him what went down, and he's on his way now. When I told him what had all happened, his reaction was a mix of shocked and, "Congratulations, you played yourself." He called me denser than a block of bricks. I told him that I still have some hope that this relationship can last, and he laughed and said I need to put that idea to rest. I know I've got things I need to work on, boundaries for sure, my relationship with my mother, who I am working on blocking on literally every avenue of communication that I have. Myself. To be completely honest, I'm not a big believer in therapy, but I know that I need it, and I'm hoping it will make me a better person, and maybe if my wife sees me working on myself, then there's some hope. As for my marriage, there's a part of me that's still optimistic, but I know it will be hard for my wife to come back from this. As painful as it is for me, I need to just play the next couple of days, weeks, months by ear and just see what happens. Update 3. Since my posts elsewhere keep getting removed, I'm going through my removed posts on the MIL subreddit and reposting them here. I believe this was the first one that got removed. It focuses on the grandparents' rights threat that is putting my wife and I through the ringer right now. The text is below. Hi there, me again. What the hell are grandparents' rights, and why is my mother hinting at them? I don't know if this is more of a legal advice scenario, but the background at this point in time is that since I've cut off my mother from all avenues, she's decided to send snail mail to both me and my wife, with whom I am currently going through a trial separation. The return address was my mother's house, and the handwriting was hers. My wife and I decided to meet up to discuss the letters, and she and I both received different ones. Not going to go into details of mine because it was mostly come home to mama type crap, but my wife's letter came in a large envelope that was mostly unmarked. No postage on it and no evidence of it going through the post office, so she must have dropped it off herself. My wife is staying with her parents, and my mom knows the address through family gatherings, holidays, etc. But the handwriting matched, and she still wrote a return address on it. The letter itself included information about how my mom was thinking of pursuing grandparents' rights, but if that's not far enough, she'll have to get creative in order to spend time with our daughter. As for the grandparents' rights, say my daughter is too young to have any type of serious relationship with my mom, but she has watched her on some occasions. My wife refused to let my mom have unsupervised visits when we were still together, but she would have some supervised playdates. As for the creative thing, I'm not entirely sure what to think. It doesn't sound like a total threat to me, but it does sound super ominous. My wife is freaked out. I let her know that I'd support her in any way possible, but we honestly don't know where to go from here. Restraining order? Cease and desist letter? Should we just document that we got this in order to keep a paper trail but ignore the letter? I personally think we need to document this to the police. Update 4. Thanks everyone for your help from the other day. I've blocked my mom on all communication, and so has my wife. We can also confidently say we've got everything locked. From my in-laws' house to our pediatrician to my daughter's social security number. As for the threat, we are following through with the legal proceedings with a lawyer following my mother's threat. But my wife, daughter, and I are doing okay and just taking it day by day. I guess at the moment I'm preparing for the worst from my mom. This morning she attempted to see my wife at work. Literally just showed up and asked to see my wife. When my wife's secretary refused, my mother demanded to see her, and it got bad enough that they threatened to call the police. We are documenting everything and also looking into moving, too. The space for my mother would be good. I'm worried she will come to my work next, but I have told my boss about the situation, and he's pretty understanding. I guess as understanding as a boss can be. In the meantime, is there anything else I should do? A kind Redditor recommended we get the house CPS ready, and we are in the process of doing that. Better to be safe than sorry. Thanks again. It might have been a rough go-around in the beginning, but I'm starting to see the light. My mother may have come between my marriage, but I refuse to let her hurt my family any further, especially since she has threatened taking my daughter away. Update 5. Hi everyone. This will likely be my last post for the next few weeks. Nothing is wrong, but we're preparing for my wife's birthday, and since I messed up the anniversary, I really want to do something special. Plus, with Halloween close by, my wife and I are getting our daughter's costume ready, decorating the house, and generally just trying to do some festive fall things. I'm finding that I'm enjoying this time with my family a lot without the interference of my mother. This is how it always should have been, but my mother almost always finds a way to work her way into what we are doing. Although we have remained no contact, she's starting to find ways to circumvent that. Hence the story below. So I'm sure I'll have more updates. Here's my next question. My mom hasn't always acted sexually towards me, but my therapist has picked up on a few red flags that started in my teens and have carried into me being a man. The first one being the fact that my mom was snuggling me in bed when I moved in with her for a short amount of time. The second is that she can be touchy-feely with me in a way that I used to think was normal mother/son love. But now I know it's weird. Playing with my hair excessively, kissing my cheeks, you get the point. One time she pinched my butt when she came and visited my daughter and told me to give her a piece of that sugar. At our wedding, she wore an extremely revealing dress, at least it wasn't white, and tried to get me to dance suggestively with her on the dance floor. I thankfully realized what was going on and did not go for it. I'm rambling at this point, but what I'm trying to say is that she did something not too long ago that takes the cake. While I was at work, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize, and it got tagged as an external server. We use Outlook, which isn't unusual since sometimes people will email and call to ask about our services. Plus, the subject line of the email said inquiry, and I could see a bit of the body copy asking about the types of services we offer. Well, to my surprise, this was a bait and switch. I opened the email to see the body copy, but underneath of it were about 4 pictures of my mother topless, with a caption under each of them that said, "Where's my sweet boy?" This was definitely an email from my mom. I don't get sick often, but I started shaking and then had to go to the bathroom to throw up. Why on earth would she think this was acceptable? As something I'll never figure out, but it began to register to me that she had just sent me a topless photo through my work computer and also through my work's internet. I'm thinking this was likely done on purpose to get me in trouble. Anyway, I forwarded the email directly to our lawyer and blocked the new email address from my work and personal email. I then went to talk to my boss about it. He knows about my mom and her antics, and he said that he received an email from the same address regarding me being unprofessional on-site a few days ago. So yeah, I think this is a setup. My boss, thankfully, is understanding of the situation, or I guess as understanding as a boss could be, and just deleted the email from my mom and let me get back to work. Did I do the right thing here? Also, I'm worried that my mom is having some sort of mental break. Not worry for her, but for myself, my wife, and my daughter. My therapist calls it escalation. If I got nude photos, I can't even imagine what's next. Is it time to call Adult Protective Services? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 6. My wife's birthday is this weekend, so we are about to go off the grid. Thought I'd update you all on the situation before we hightail it to nature. Nothing crazy has happened, thankfully, besides a few unmarked letters in the mail to both me and my wife, which we have made photocopies of for our personal records and then sent them straight to the lawyer. Also, after speaking with my boss about the photos that were sent to me from her, I have also decided to go the police route with the awful photos that my mother sent me. Still no grandparents' rights papers yet, thankfully. Again, not sure if it will ever happen, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Some people have recommended that we get our house CPS ready, just in case. We've got that handled. In case it ever gets to that, we are still absolutely no contact with my mother, regardless of her attempts to get in contact with us. Lastly, we are serious about moving and are considering viewing homes and apartments next week. However, my wife is still adamant that she does not want to jump ahead and assume we will stay together after this boils over. If we purchase or rent together and then decide to divorce or legally separate, that would bind us to a living situation that I don't think would be good for anyone involved, including our daughter. I respect her decision, and although it's not ideal, I agree that we need to maybe let this settle and revisit the trial separation at a later date. So things are slowing down a bit. I'm happy that things are returning to a bit of normal. It's still a rough road, and I'm working on myself and my family every day. Update 7. Basically, the title. Still no contact with my mom, still not answering any of her attempted communication. It's not confirmed, but my wife has a hunch that now mom is trying to confront us in a public place. Like when we go out shopping. It happened 3 times over the past 2 weeks, and at first we thought it was incidental, but since it's happened twice more, we are a little concerned. An example. We go to a nearby grocery store that's close to our home but farther away from where she lives. I'd say it's about 25 to 30 minutes from her home and also not the closest grocery place for her. Wednesday is our grocery shopping day since we both get off from work a little bit early. My mom knows this, as sometimes she would request for me to get her something, and I'd go out to her house and bring groceries to her. I know, my mom is fully able to go grocery shopping herself. I thought I was being a good son. Now I know it was manipulative. 2 days ago, we arrive at said grocery store and find my mom pacing around outside looking like a crazy person. We decided to turn around and go to another grocery store. Again, I'm not a detective, but this seems suspicious to my wife and is starting to seem suspicious to me, too. Are we overreacting here? A small part of me thinks we are being hypersensitive to this because of all that has gone down, but between everyone telling me my mom is dangerous to wanting to protect my family, I just don't know what to believe anymore. Any advice is appreciated. Update 8. So my mother showed up at my house in a frenzy. Thanks for the suggestions for the lock on our front gate and the ring. They've been super helpful up to this point and especially helpful now. Anyway, my mom shows up at our home unannounced and screaming, crying for me and saying how she just needs me. She's crying and banging on our front gate, demanding to speak to me. If this were the old me, I would have let her in, and to be honest, I almost did, but the new me decided to call the police. When they came, the police immediately told her to leave our property. It took a few moments, but then she finally left. I don't feel good about this. She's my mom. I feel obligated to speak to her, but she has also been so terrible to me and my wife. I'm going to try to go to sleep and do my best, but I've got a lot of thinking to do and maybe some more to share with my therapist. Update 9. Hello everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I thought I'd give a quick update on my mother without going into too much detail. She drove to our house one evening and had a psychotic break in front of our home that involved self-harm. It was enough for us to call the police again, and she is now spending time at a mental facility. That's all I'll speak about on that matter. With grandparents' rights not really on the horizon anymore. My wife has approached me and said she still wants the trial separation and the divorce. She feels like these last 2 months or so we have been playing house in order to keep up a good look in case my mother decided to pull something, and that she's put up with a crazy for too long. This is starting to impact her own mental health. So she has moved herself and our daughter back in with her parents for the time being and wants to speak about our options with our lawyer on Monday. So I guess we will start that process soon. I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I also can't blame her. I asked her if all of the bad really outweighs the good, and she gave me the most stern look and said our relationship has been almost nothing but bad and walked away. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know these are things I need to bring up to my therapist. Thank you for listening. Update 10. I've learned that my mom views me as her husband. My therapist calls this emotional incest. Although at times it has unfortunately crossed over into my mother actually wanting to get physical with me, such as her snuggling me in bed and sending me nude photos, and in some cases, some small sexual activity that I've repressed and rather not get into here. This is the first time I've actually written it out or said it out loud besides with my therapist. Coming to terms that you've been sexually assaulted by your own mother when you were a minor does not feel great. I don't know how long it'll take me to work through these feelings, but please know I am working on them. I've learned that because my mom views me as her husband, she sees herself in constant competition with my wife. My therapist has pointed out that my mom views herself as the mistress, which may explain the nude photos. I've learned that my mom has very likely never properly grieved the death of my father. I've learned that almost every girlfriend I've had, including my wife, has never been good enough for my mom because only she believes that she's good enough for me. My therapist believes that, at the risk of protecting me after my father passed away, that my mom went ballistic and turned me into her husband. My therapist calls it a son's bend. I've learned that years of mental and emotional manipulation on my mom's side has gotten me here. Up until I had my first reality check, I really did believe all of this was annoying but normal and just how she is. I still feel slightly guilty over everything that has happened, but my guilt has turned into anger. I feel like I've been robbed of a normal life. However, being in therapy has opened my eyes to what can happen next. Though I'm only in my 30s, I still have time to live a great life and be a great dad to my daughter. As always, thanks for listening. I'm always thankful for the advice and the support. As you've probably guessed, my normal meter is still a bit off, so it's good to hear other perspectives. Update 11. My wife and I decided to go through with the trial separation. She and our daughter are at her parents' house for the time being while I am at our home. It's the most awful feeling, and I've never been this empty before. For divorce is coming. I guess I should start calling her my ex-wife. I'm continuing with counseling so I can work through not just my personal feelings but also what next steps are going to be. I've always wanted to move out of state and maybe try out a new career, but I don't want to be far from my daughter. We'll see how it goes. I'd also like to thank all of you for your well wishes on my last post. I tried to respond to all of them, but I really just couldn't. I break down crying every time I see support. They're happy tears, but they're also a reminder of what could have been. Thank you for listening. Final update. I guess I should have seen it coming, but I almost wish she hadn't told me. She said that it was more of a heads up in case I see her out and about on a weekend or something. We're separated, so it's not against the rules for her to date or anything, and we're in a no-fault state for the divorce that's inevitably coming our way. I'm not in a place emotionally where I'm ready to date. I'm not even close. But hearing that she'll be meeting up with an old flame for dinner next weekend rocked me to my core. It means I really can't get her back. I did try one last time and it did not go well. She said she's done with coming second to my mother and now second to the drama that's been going on in our lives, and that she doesn't want to raise our daughter in an unhealthy environment. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My parents kicked me out at 14 for bad grades. I went from being homeless to building a six-figure business, but they tried to take credit in front of everyone, so I exposed all their absurdities. I am 27M. My parents kicked me out of the house because I got bad grades. Yeah, that's right. Though we have been living in the US for 2 generations, my parents have not learned anything from American parents about how to raise a child. My parents have literally screwed my entire childhood, obsessing over my school grades. They think good grades are the only way to make a successful life. To make it worse, my sister, who is a year older than me, is a class topper, so I was constantly subjected to comparison in school as well as at home. The situation was better until elementary school. I used to get A's in most subjects. My sister graduated elementary school with an A+ and topped the class, while I got an A and was nowhere in the list of top 10. That was the beginning of my parents' disappointment. In middle school, after every exam result, my parents would sit with my sister's last year's grade card and would compare it with mine. As this game of comparison started, my grades started dwindling further with every dip in my scores. My parents' rage soared higher than in elementary school. My grades went south to B's and C's. My parents lost their minds with my every dipping grade. Except for hitting me, they did all sorts of things to punish me. They made me kneel down for several hours without food and water. They would starve me on the evening before the exam so that I could focus on my studies. A month before the exams, they would rip me off my video games, cage me at home, not allow me to go out to play, and not give me ice creams, chocolates, or any of my favorite foods. Whenever I asked them for anything, their response would be, "Get good grades, then you'll get this." Eventually, I stopped asking them for anything, knowing I wouldn't get it. My parents run a grocery store on a back street. My grandparents were immigrants in this country. My grandfather worked as a daily wage laborer and my grandmother as a janitor. They worked 2 jobs each to raise my father and my other 2 uncles. My father had to quit his studies early on to support his family. He has been working since he was 11. A similar story runs in my mother's family too. Mom and Dad worked very hard in their teenage years and 20s to save money and start the small grocery store on the corner of the street. They think that getting good grades can only bring them out of poverty. We are not as poor as they portray, typical Asian thing of saving for a rainy day and starving on the current day. While I appreciate all their hard work and their faith in the education system, they overdid it. School grades barely matter until you don't have to repeat a year, and repeating a year is also not that bad. It just pulls you behind your peers by a year, but that's okay. By torturing a kid at such a tender age, they were setting up for an imminent failure. As a kid, I genuinely used to work hard to match up to my sister's grades, but somehow I couldn't. I struggled with memorizing stuff efficiently like my sister. However, I was good in calculations which didn't require mugging up. But as my parents' punishment got severe, I turned rebellious. I deliberately skipped my classes and loitered in the playground. I would fill my exam papers with stupid jokes and song lyrics to annoy them even more. They grounded me by locking me up in a basement with my books and only released me when I completed my lessons on weekends and vacations. I was not allowed to play outside. All my video games and comics were seized, and new ones were never bought. But I was a smart kid. Whatever they did, I found a way to sneak out. My parents went to the grocery store in the morning and only came at night, so I used to spend the whole day playing outside. When my parents got to know that I was sneaking out in their absence, they started taking me with them to the store on the weekends and during the summer vacations. It was supposed to be a punishment for me, but it turned out to be something I started enjoying. I loved interacting with people, helping them decide which Cal brand they should buy, and taking care of the bill counter. This didn't go down well with my parents. They didn't want me to run their grocery store. They wanted me to become a doctor or engineer. Anything less than that would mean bringing disgrace to an Asian family. One day, I casually said that I wanted to be a salesman because I'm quite good at closing sales. My parents were horrified to hear this because, according to them, only uneducated people do sales jobs. Since they are spending so much money on my education, I should do a respectful job, which was either a doctor or engineer. All this went on until I pushed all their buttons by scoring an F grade in my freshman year of high school. My parents lost their minds. I had to repeat a year. They were done with all their punishments. They blew up in my face as if I had done any heinous crime. There was nothing left to punish me except for hitting me. They did everything to apparently bring me on the right track. The verbal abuse and mental trauma reached its peak. They said I brought shame to the house and they cannot take the embarrassment I have inflicted upon the family. They threw me out of the house and said I was on my own and that I should never return home, even if I died of hunger and cold. I was devastated. Though I was a notorious kid, I never thought of running away from home. I was not at all prepared for this. My parents didn't let me socialize, so I didn't have many friends to ask for help. I was either locked up at home or taken to the grocery store for a helping hand. When the initial fear of living in the streets subsided, I felt a sense of freedom. I felt so much relief to be able to do what I wanted. The first night, I slept on a bench in an open park. The next day, I went downtown searching for a salesman job. I knew I was good at sales. I went from store to store asking if they had any vacancies. After trying my luck at nearly a dozen stores, I landed a job at a beauty store. It wasn't easy either. I didn't have any qualifications or prior experience, but the store owner needed a staff urgently, so he gave me the task of selling an expensive lipstick as an add-on to a customer who was there just for a night cream. I don't know how, but I was able to do that. The owner thought I was passionate and cute to be able to sell makeup to young women, so he hired me. The pay was low, but he gave me a place to sleep. Later, as the sales increased, I asked for a commission on each of the sales I made. That was the beginning of my journey to become a successful businessman. My parents thought that making me work at their grocery store was a punishment. Little did they know that it was actually helpful for me. It gave me real-life experience. I wish they realized my potential and understood that practical experience is far more valuable than mindlessly swatting academic information. After that, I hopped jobs for better pay. One of my employers even offered to bear my college expenses, but I declined. I had something else in mind. I wanted to start my own venture. At the age of 21, I started my own company, which provides support and sales services to other small businesses. My company closes sales for other product-based companies. We generate sales and revenue for them, and they pay us hefty commissions. My company has projects from across all verticals of products, from credit cards to insurance, cosmetics to books. We are tied up with all sorts of companies. It didn't blow up in a day or a year. It took more than 5 years to get stable. I started it with 5 people for just one client, which sold mattresses and pillows. Now we are a company of 200 sales agents helping some 50-plus companies sell thousands of products. Enough of mambo-jumbo. Coming to the point, my mom has been stalking me over the last few weeks. She has started following me on Facebook and Instagram. I have an open account, and she's going inside my profile and liking my old pictures and posts. I don't know if she's deliberately trying to show her presence or if she's doing it by mistake while zooming into my picture. One thing is for sure. They are mesmerized by my lifestyle. They thought me to be a loser who would never be able to do anything in life without good grades. But here I am, making 6 figures a month. A week ago, she texted me that she missed me and asked me to come home. I saw her message and left her on scene. She is showering praises on me as to how proud they are to see their son, me, successful in life. She is now pestering me to visit her. The thing is, no matter how much I ignored her messages, I couldn't stop thinking about them and my childhood trauma. I badly want to give it back to them for all the humiliations they have put me into. I want to go home and flash my successful life on their face. But on the other hand, my girlfriend is of the opinion that I should stay away from them and not get trapped in their emotional net. She thinks that they would eventually guilt-trip me to extort money from me. What do you guys think I should do? Update 1. Hello all, this is going to be hilarious. Despite my girlfriend heating me against meeting my parents, the part of me wanting to rub my success in their face won, so I showed up at their door. Dad wasn't home, but Mom and sister were waiting for me. Dad is still ignorant of my success. He thinks I'm making money by duping innocent people and doesn't want to be associated with me. Mom apologized to me and said that I had to suffer because of Dad's old-school beliefs in scoring good grades for life. It was funny how Mom made Dad the scapegoat while she was also in tandem with Dad and torturing me. I pointed out that she was stricter in punishing me. She brushed it off, saying she was just following Dad's instructions as a good wife. When I further tried to put her on the spot, she laughed out loud and said it was the tales of a century ago and I should move on, and we should reunite as a happy family. It seems I asked my sister about her life. She said she has completed her master's in literature but is struggling to get a teaching job because of her poor communication and social skills. Though I knew the reason behind her poor people skills, I pretended to be curious and asked her why her excellent grades failed to get her a job. She blamed our parents for her failure. She has literally spent her entire life locked in a room and studying in order to impress our parents. She pushed herself to the extreme and immersed herself in books. She was a year older than me, so I knew how isolated she used to be in school. She barely had any friends. Mom didn't let her have any because, according to her, white kids were bad in studies and were a bad influence. Do you see the problem here? Despite working so hard all her life, she is unable to secure a job, even if someone is hiring her based on her qualifications. Her poor communication and social skills are costing her a job. Seeing her condition, I feel glad that I was a rebel. Else I would have also landed a similar fate like her. They also wanted to keep me isolated and not let me mingle with other kids and just focus on studies. How wrong were they? My sister joined me in bashing my mother for their poor parental skills. Mom started sobbing and very cleverly shifted all the blame on Dad. After we were done blaming Mom for our traumatic childhood, I asked her why she called me. She went on and on flattering me about how proud she was to see my success. The truth was, she had no clue what I was doing. Like I said earlier, to an Asian parent, the definition of success is a doctor or engineer or a high-paying job at the bank at the least. They don't understand entrepreneurship. To them, running any business is the same as running a grocery store, which they look down upon. Sitting in that house brought back so many memories of my childhood when I was convinced by my parents that I would end up living on the streets like a loser. They even manipulated me to think that I was mentally unfit and that there was a problem in me that I was unable to score A+. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. My parents even took me to a therapist because they thought I had a problem focusing on studies. After 2 to 3 sessions, the therapist bashed my parents for unnecessarily pressurizing me to study and that I was a very normal kid with a normal IQ according to my age. My girlfriend bet that my mom had invited me to ask for money. She lost the bet because Mom didn't ask for any money, but from her behavior, it is evident that a money demand is on the way. Since then, my mom is constantly checking on me, and whenever her text pops up, my girlfriend puts a $1 bet that it is about money. LOL, I'm winning every single bet because Mom hasn't asked for the money yet, but I think I'm soon going to lose the bet because Mom has invited me for dinner this weekend. I know she is trying to paint a rosy picture of herself before asking for anything. I just got a text that she is arranging a dinner for me this weekend. I'll update you about this in my next post. I have to rush now. Bye. Update 2. Hey all. I got my sweet revenge on my parents. I don't think they are ever going to call me again after this humiliation. In my last post, I mentioned Mom's text inviting me for dinner. I responded that I was busy and can't make it. Yes, I was acting pricey. When she further insisted, I asked her why she was acting so sweet to me when Dad still thinks that I'm making money through illegal means. She said that it was Dad who's organizing the dinner for me as a gesture to make up things with me. She says that Dad is proud of me and wants to apologize to me in person. I asked, what do you mean by organizing? It's just 4 of us, right? She said no. They are calling all the close friends and relatives living nearby. I said, sure, I'll be there. I couldn't get a better opportunity to avenge my childhood trauma. Mom asked me to be in my best attire and reach on time. The rebellious kid in me got activated. I wore my gym sweatshirt with my trekking shorts and a cap on top of that. I showed up 2 hours late. It's a great deal for an Asian parent. Wearing shorts at a social gathering is like a crime to them. Mom continuously called me, but I didn't respond. I just sent a couple of texts that I would be late, no reason, no explanation. I'm sure that would have pissed off my parents. They have a thing for showing themselves as the perfect people. If any guests were to arrive at my house, my parents would spend at least 2 days cleaning every corner of the house, making a list of food items the guests would be served, and each item of the house would be placed in the perfect place. The guests would be served in the best china set, and if they stayed over, they would be offered the best bed sheets, pillows, and everything. They say it's our culture to treat our guests supremely, but some bit of it they overdo to get social validation. My parents had booked one rooftop section of the restaurant. When I arrived in such casual wear, I definitely got a look. Since I'm earning more than anyone else present there, that look was masked with a fake smile of appreciation. My parents were also pissed off, but they didn't express it. They hugged me and raised a toast to me, singing praises about me. This was the first time Dad ever hugged me. Not comforting at all. I felt resentful. The way they behaved made me question myself if I was the jerk to think them to be wrong all this while. They are imposters. The hall was filled with people, and for a moment I thought of silently bearing it and having my dinner and leaving, but the way they were showing off my success as theirs pissed me off. They were bragging about my success, my possessions, and my fancy lifestyle, and guess what? They were taking all the credit for shaping me into a good human being. My outspoken aunt intervened and said, "Didn't you guys throw him out of the house?" I burst out in laughter, clapping at her courage. My parents' faces were flustered in embarrassment, but they were quick to cover it up, saying that it was a means to bring me on the right track and that it was because of their punishment that I was able to do good in life. I lost my marbles when they said this. I was like, that's right, guys. I owe all my success to my toxic parents. And you know what's the best decision they have ever taken for me? Kicking me out of the house to live on the streets. Yeah, that's right. You're so confidently claiming that you always knew I would make it big. It's kind of funny because I remember a different version. Didn't you used to say that I would end up being a loser, homeless, drug addict, and worse, a criminal? Wow, remember how you all deprived me of a family vacation as a punishment for my poor grades? You used to lock me home for a whole week with so limited food. I was locked in the basement without proper ventilation for hours and was asked to complete my lessons there. You are right. All these were necessary to make me a better person. Maybe everyone in this room should do the same to their child to make them successful. UCF, this is a secret sauce of success, you know. It was such a monologue. The grudge and the pain that had piled up inside me for years just blew out. My mom tried to intervene in between, but I shrugged her off and continued my rant. My sister tried to calm me down, rubbing my arms, but I was beyond anyone's control. My parents were in tears. Plus, no, they would have preferred death over this embarrassment in front of the whole community, but I care less about their reputation. My sister was also bawling, standing beside me. Some of you commented on how could I have a soft corner for my sister when she never stood up for me as an elder sister. Well, I don't blame her at all. She was a kid just like me. She was just a year older. My parents did more harm to her than me. At least I was able to rebel and enjoy my life, sneak out to play, and have also made a better life for myself. She has lost her spine by obeying our parents. She never got to enjoy her childhood. Even now, she's struggling with low confidence and has been living with parents. I have offered her a job in my company. She has even taken personality development classes, but it is not helping much. I suggested she start working in my company and develop some soft skills, and then she can decide a career for herself. I have cut off all ties with my parents. I told Mom not to contact me ever and that I was talking to her only to take my revenge on them. I have blocked her. I'm intending to be in touch with my sister. My sister patted me for exposing our parents. She said that this was the best revenge I could pull on my parents because they don't care about money or anything else other than their reputation as the perfect parents in front of the community. After that dinner night, some of my family friends and relatives reached out to me, saying how sorry they were to hear about my struggle. I said I didn't reveal my parents' truth to gain any sympathy. I just wanted everyone to know that cornering your child for grades would do them more harm than any good, and we have ourselves as examples of bad parenting. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Husband said he wished he married his female best friend instead of me. Then I found out they actually slept together. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 29M, for a year. I met him 2 years ago at a friend's birthday party, and we felt something click almost instantly. We got along really well, and soon enough we were in a serious relationship. My relationship and marriage were as normal as anyone else's, with its regular ups and downs, except for maybe one thing. My husband still had a BFF from his college days, and he was very close to her still. I'll refer to her as Nina, 29s. My husband and Nina have been friends for over 10 years, and she was even the best man at our wedding. I didn't have anything against her, and maybe I did feel a little insecure in the initial stages of my relationship, but with time I started relaxing around Nina as well. Because when I asked my husband about her, he reassured me that they'd always been friends and would never ever be anything more than that. Nina was a little weird, in my personal opinion. I think the Gen Z kids nowadays are calling women like her pick-me, so I'd say that that's how she was. She never put me down, and I believe that it was out of respect for my husband, but she didn't ever hesitate to talk crap about other women and make fun of them for just doing feminine things. She'd mock other women we knew for liking makeup, not watching sports, and not drinking beer, etc. I didn't like that side of her, but I'm not a very confrontational person, so I didn't say anything to her either. And as long as my husband wasn't joining in on that, I was fine with it. Recently, Nina had a really bad breakup. She'd been dating this guy she met at work, and they'd been together for a little over a year. Nina was crazy about this guy, and my husband had told me that she might even want to marry this boyfriend of hers. I was actually kind of relieved because he told me that most of her relationships before this were pretty short-lived, and it used to make me worry that maybe Nina had a thing for my husband, but if she was planning to marry this guy, then that probably wasn't the case. 1.5 weeks ago, though, she showed up at our house in a really bad state, and I was really alarmed because she looked totally out of sorts and was actually sobbing. Later on, after my husband and I comforted her and calmed her down, we found out that her boyfriend had just dumped her right before she was about to ask him to marry her, because he'd gone through her texts a few minutes before when she was in the shower, and he'd found a dating app on it. He was naturally livid about that and accused her of cheating, but she insisted that the app was there just because she got bored sometimes and would treat it like a game for matches but wouldn't actually speak to anyone or initiate anything. But he didn't like her explanation and left her anyway. Personally, I think her excuse was just ridiculous. If she was really that bored, then she should have downloaded some actual games on her phone instead of a dating app. I don't know anyone who does that, and I don't think her boyfriend was wrong, but my husband was consoling her and telling her that it wasn't her fault and that he'd help her get him back if that's what she wanted. My husband let her stay over that night on the couch and even watched over her because he said that he'd never seen her like this and he wanted to make sure that she was all right. He told me that I could sleep in the bedroom, but I decided to sleep on the pull-out couch with him because I felt uneasy leaving them alone in the living room. So we all ended up sleeping in the living room, my husband and I on the pull-out couch, and Nina on the other couch. The next morning, she was supposed to leave, but she stayed on because she said she felt too weak to go back home alone, and my husband requested me to let her stay, so I agreed. I didn't want to, but I didn't know how to ask her to leave when my husband was trying to convince me otherwise. And like I said, I'm just a total pushover when it comes to my loved ones, and so I let her stay for the next couple of days. It was all about Nina. My husband was attending to every need of hers and waiting on her constantly, as if she were a sick little girl and not just another 30-year-old going through a breakup. It was weird for me, and on several occasions I wanted so badly to say something against it, but my husband kept talking about how poor Nina was going through something so bad and how her boyfriend didn't even deserve her, but they were still trying to get him back. I wasn't feeling particularly sympathetic towards the woman who'd basically just taken over my home, my husband, and my life, so I wouldn't say much and would just let him talk whenever Nina wasn't around. My husband had started distancing himself from me after Nina showed up, and it just became all about her. After a while, she was all he talked about. It was always just poor Nina this and poor Nina that, and that was all he talked about. I started getting really annoyed after a while and was almost about to sit him down and talk to him about how this living situation wasn't working anymore and Nina needed to go home. A few days ago, I came back home to find that my husband had come back before me, and it was kind of surprising because he usually tells me when he comes back home early. Even after Nina's arrival, we'd all been going to work as usual, and the first one to come back was usually me. I unlocked the door and headed in, but the living room was empty, so I went towards the bedroom and found the door slightly ajar. And when I peeked in, I saw my husband sitting on the bed with Nina. They were talking, and Nina was fiddling with her phone while sulking as usual. I wanted to barge in and let them know I was back home because they clearly hadn't heard me enter, but it was too tempting to listen to what they were talking about when I was not around, so I remained outside and decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. My husband was telling Nina that this was bound to happen at some point and that she deserved better, so my guess was that Nina had finally told him to stop contacting him or something similar. Then Nina started whining once more about how this was all so unfair, and that he was being too hard on her for no reason apart from the fact that she just downloaded a dating app to mess around with. Then she said that she wished she'd never dated him in the first place, but she was just so desperate to get married at her age that she was ready to settle for anyone at this point. My husband told her that she was being ridiculous and that she deserved better, to which Nina said something that made my stomach drop. She actually started flirting with my husband and told him that she wished she'd married him instead. But now she'd missed her chance and it was too late for them now. I expected my husband to say something to dismiss that or to tell her to stop at the very least. I didn't expect him to say what he said next. He told Nina that even he occasionally found himself wishing that he'd married her instead of me, and of late he'd been wondering how different life would have been if that had been the case. As if that wasn't hard enough for me to hear, he even added more to that and told her that after Nina had started living with us, he'd sometimes imagine her to be his wife instead, and the two of them started giggling. I was disgusted and immediately made up my mind to leave. I'd heard enough, and I didn't need to hear more. So I went back out the door and drove to the nearest hotel. Once I was in the room, I completely broke down. I've been in the hotel since then, and I've also blocked my husband, all his friends and family, and obviously Nina too. It's been 3 days since then, and I haven't been out of the hotel room since then. Yesterday, my husband texted me from a friend's phone, and I'd forgotten to block that particular friend of mine. So I unfortunately received those texts as well. He told me that he knew I'd overheard the conversation he'd been having with Nina because when I left I'd forgotten to shut the door behind me. He said that he didn't know how much I'd heard, but he wanted to let me know that he'd just been saying all that to make Nina feel better about herself, and he still loved me, not her. He also said that Nina had left the day itself after he told her that she couldn't stay anymore if it was making me insecure, and that I needed to come back so that we could discuss this. Now I don't know what to think of it because on one hand, I want to go back to him because I really do love him, but I'm just so tired of being such a pushover and letting people walk all over me. I think that I'm the one who was an idiot, and that's why this even happened. If I'd put my foot down and made my husband tell Nina to leave earlier, then I wouldn't be in this situation at all. So I don't know what to think right now. I can't talk to any of my friends or family about this because I feel like I was a total fool here and let my husband treat me like a second option, and I don't feel like explaining the situation to them either because it's just so pathetic. I was an idiot and my husband was, well, there's just no way I can justify what he did. He really had no need to say what he did to Nina. So what if I refused to go back to him? Update 1. I told him today that I'm not coming back and will be filing for divorce soon. I unblocked him and texted him back on his own number. He called me as soon as I sent that text, and he sounded very upset on the phone. He just repeated everything he'd already said in his text. That he was just trying to make Nina feel better, and that he didn't mean anything that he'd said. He said that he'd asked Nina to leave the day itself and even said that I could talk to Nina if I didn't believe him. I told him that it wasn't about whether I believed him or not. He just couldn't say things like that to another woman and expect me to be all right with it, and I wasn't interested in talking to Nina even if my husband didn't mean what he'd said. She definitely had meant it, and just like I'd always known, she'd wanted my husband all to herself all along. Even thinking about the fact that I'd let her stay with us made me sick because she and my husband had made a total fool out of me, and I'd let them. But at least I was going to leave now and wouldn't make the mistake of staying with him any longer. After that phone call, I blocked him again and decided to tell my friends and family that I was leaving him because it had been almost a week, and none of them knew what I'd been up to. I'd even been working remotely because I was so depressed, but I was finally feeling better, and I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off today itself. I'm finally feeling relieved now, and I think I made the right choice. I've been a fool to ever believe that Nina and my husband wouldn't take advantage of my kindness and the fact that I never questioned their relationship, never tried to ruin their friendship, never stood in the way, and tried to help Nina through her breakup. I'm not ready to be a fool anymore. This is where it ends. Update 2. Hey everyone. Thanks to everyone who's been nice and non-judgmental. I really needed that because this is all really difficult for me. Anyway, I spoke to a lawyer today, a friend of my dad's, and he reassured me that he'll help me to the best of his abilities. We're going to file for divorce in a few days. I also decided that I wanted to go back home today to collect my things because I'd left in a rush and hadn't taken anything apart from my work laptop and my car with me. I bought some clothes from a nearby store, but I obviously can't live in the hotel forever and need more clothes and toiletries if I want to move out. So I went back home today at a time when I thought my husband wouldn't be at home, a little after 1 p.m. Unfortunately, his car was parked in the driveway and so was Nina's. Seeing that, I left clearly. He'd been lying to me about Nina having left, or maybe she had left that day. But once I told my husband that my decision to leave was final, she'd moved back in with him. I felt awful when I saw her car there, but I'm trying not to let these things get to me anymore because that'll just make it harder for me to keep it together. I can't afford to break down mentally when I'm already going to have to prepare for a divorce and have to rejoin work in a day or two. I've spoken to a friend of mine, and she's been kind enough to let me live at her place for a few days while I look for a new apartment or house for myself. Everyone's been really helpful, and I'm really lucky to have such wonderful and supportive friends and family because I don't think I'd be able to get through this otherwise. Update 3. Hey, I haven't been able to update as often because I was really caught up with work, and I also moved into a new apartment yesterday, so I've had my plate full for a while. I filed for divorce almost a week ago, and my husband was served 3 days back. He was not happy about it, I know, because the day before yesterday I went back to the house so I could collect all my things once and for all. I'm not taking any of the furniture yet because the apartment I'm renting is pre-furnished, so I don't need it as such. He was furious when I showed up at the house, and he was trying to talk to me, but I just ignored him and didn't engage in any conversation. I told him that I'd just come back to take my things and I'd be done in an hour or so. I'd also brought along my friend to help, the friend I'd been living with previously, so that I wouldn't have to deal with him on my own. He tried to talk to me initially, but when that failed he stopped trying, and I thought that he'd given up and felt relieved, but within half an hour Nina had also shown up. I could choose not to talk to them, but I couldn't just drown them out when they were talking to me, and so I had to listen to Nina talk about how my husband had asked her to leave that day just for my sake, and that even though she felt like she'd fallen in love with him, she was ready to sacrifice it so that we could be together. She kept talking about how she was going through a really tough time in her life, and that's why she wanted me to stay with her best friend, because her own heart had already been broken first by her ex and now by my husband. She didn't want to feel responsible and guilty for breaking up our marriage as well, and that's why she wanted me to stay with him. I don't know how I managed not to fly off the handle when she was saying those things, and even my friend looked scandalized because of how ridiculous those two were being. It was beyond selfish of them, but I've learned that thinking about other people and their feelings was definitely not their strong suit. I just didn't have anything to say to them anymore because I don't think anything sensible can even penetrate those thick skulls of theirs, and I'm not interested in wasting my breath. If they can think of themselves as the victims even in situations like this, then I mean really, there's nothing that I can say or do to change their minds. So anyway, I guess that was the last time that we met without lawyers and informally. I'm out of there for good. Update 4. Hello folks, it's been almost 2 weeks since I filed for divorce, and my husband finally responded a couple of days back. My husband surprisingly decided not to contest it. I had mixed feelings about that because the way he was acting the last time we met actually made me think that he wanted me back. But I guess not. I'm obviously a little surprised by this, but I'm also relieved that he isn't contesting it because that would just lead to more complications. My lawyer suggested that we find proof of him being in an affair with Nina, and I honestly don't think that it'll be that hard. I heard from a friend that they spotted my husband holding hands with Nina in a cafe around a week back, but it didn't look very romantic. My husband looked upset, and Nina looked like she was comforting him. I didn't know what to make of that, but I did mention it to my lawyer, and he said that this information would definitely help us in the divorce. On one hand, I obviously feel really upset that my husband is spending so much of his time with Nina because that just reinforces what I already knew. That he'd only ever had eyes for her and never me. He'd not only wasted his own time, but he'd also wasted my time and Nina's as well because he couldn't get his feelings in order. I don't know what to think anymore, and emotionally I've just been numb. I've only been going to work and coming back like a robot because I just feel so empty and awful all the time. All the anger, sadness, betrayal, and pain I was feeling has been replaced by this emptiness because I just don't know what I did to deserve this. Maybe I was stupid enough to believe that my husband being so close with Nina would never cause any problems in our marriage and even tried to be that woman's friend, but I don't think even that warrants something like this. Yeah, I was dumb, but this is just crazy. I've been trying to put on a brave face, but I'm just exhausted and don't know how long I can keep this up honestly. I feel like I rushed into this whole relationship and marriage with my husband just because I didn't want to lose him because he was one of the rare people that I actually connected with. I didn't think that this would ever backfire so badly, but here we are at this point. I don't care what happens in the divorce or the settlement. I just want to be out of this and don't want anything more to do with my husband. I want this nightmarish relationship to come to an end, and I want people to never talk to me about him ever again or about Nina either. I just want to be done with this no matter what it takes. Update 5. So it's been 2 days since the last update, and I'd been at my wit's end on what to do or how to prove that my husband and Nina were involved in an emotional affair. I was also feeling really low knowing that even if I did somehow manage to prove that it would be me who would feel like crap about whatever I would find. But then, a few hours ago, I received an email from my husband where he just basically confessed that he'd slept with Nina last night because both of them were feeling really depressed. He said that they were drunk and sad and couldn't stay apart anymore on my account because I'd made it very clear that I wouldn't take him back and we were done. He'd sent it from a new email address, and when I read it I was broken. I genuinely didn't know what to feel, and I still don't to a certain extent. So it had finally happened, and while I knew that this was something to be happy about because he basically just confessed to infidelity, it also meant that all the things that I was afraid of when I first got into a relationship happened to be true after all. I knew this. I'd known it all along, but to finally accept it and confront it was just so damn difficult. I ended up crying for a while after I read that email, but then I did forward it to my lawyer, and he seemed pleased with it. However, even if I was sorted on the legal front, I was emotionally shattered. I just wanted someone to reassure me that it'd be okay. So I called my dad up since he's always been there for me, big or small, and told him what had happened. He was at my door within half an hour with cake and ice cream, and my mom came along with him, so that was just really sweet of them. I ended up crying some more when they arrived, but eventually they managed to get me to stop crying and consoled me. They didn't tell me that this wasn't my fault. They didn't make me feel judged. They were just there, and honestly, that's all that I needed to feel better. I knew that I could have been a little more aware and smarter about this whole thing, and maybe I could have avoided the situation altogether, but what's done was done now, and I couldn't change the past, so I had to just move on and focus on the future. My parents told me they'd be staying with me for a while and make sure that I was all right because they told me that I'd lost an insane amount of weight, and they couldn't just let me sit around and sulk anymore. I'm grateful for that, and I hope that I feel better soon and also that my divorce will be finalized soon. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Found out cheating wife took a trip to meet up with her A.P, so I showed up and this happened today. I'm going to tell you all about one crazy life-changing event that happened to me. It all started when I got a phone call halfway through my workday. My wife, 27, and I, 33, were married for 6 years at this point, and she had been looking for a job for a year. She earned a small amount of money by making crafts and selling them on Etsy. I didn't want her to feel rushed or forced to get a job she hated. She'd already been through a really crappy childhood, so I only ever wanted to motivate her and make her feel safe. Our relationship seemed wonderful to me. She would get depressed sometimes, and I knew it was because of painful memories of the past. I asked her what was on her mind at least once a day, but much of the time she didn't say anything. When she did, it wasn't anything I could help with or didn't already know. So, on this particular day at work, I got a phone call from the police department of the next county over. I was confused but listened as he explained that he had no choice but to arrest my wife today. Understandably, I freaked out. I asked him what the hell happened and what was going on. He said they received several calls about a woman setting a car on fire in one of the residential neighborhoods. My first thought was that there was no way it was my wife, but he verified her name and phone number and said they had possession of her car. I was absolutely mind-blown. I asked if she gave any statement, the reason for being there, or an explanation, and he said so far she was unwilling to talk to them. I asked if she was allowed to call me, and instead he asked me to come in person to talk to her. I agreed. When I got there, they had me sit in the interview room with her. Her expression went from hardened and angry to soft and defeated. She covered her face with her hands. I asked her what the heck happened. I needed to know because I could not figure this out. She whispered that she couldn't tell me. I asked why. She said it was because we were being recorded, and I wouldn't want to know. I said she was wrong. I wanted to know, and she was apparently caught red-handed, so the only thing left to do was explain herself. She sat up, revealing her red and depressed face. She said she was setting fire to her ex's car because he cheated on her. After I let this sink in a bit, I asked her how long ago this happened and why seek revenge now. She really didn't want to answer me anymore, but I was her husband. She was in a police station. Her options were limited. After breathing a lot and crying, she told me he cheated on her last night. I said, "What?" And she went on to explain that she'd been seeing him for a few months while I was at work. I could not believe what I was hearing. The cops were going to have a ball watching this drama unfold. So I clarified that she was seeing him behind my back, and when she found out he cheated on her last night, she decided to set his car on fire in broad daylight. After hearing my words, she looked like a shell of a woman. I told her I was ashamed to be her husband. She exposed her own affair by losing any self-control or responsibility she had left. I told her we were over and left the police station. I got a few sorry looks from some of the officers. My wife freaked out. She could only call people with permission from the cops, so the next person she called was her grandmother who raised her. Her grandmother actually thought it was a scam call and didn't look into it any further for another 3 weeks. Then she was finally contacted and paid my wife's bail. In order to afford it, she had to take out a loan. This was just the start of my wife's consequences. After she was out of jail, she tried to call me over and over again. After receiving 15 calls in one day, I finally answered it. She begged me to hear her out and at least meet her for coffee. She said it was the least I could do after the ordeal she'd been through, and our 6-year relationship deserved one more chance of survival. I laughed a good, hearty laugh. I told her our 6-year relationship was over, dead in the past. I only kept that relationship with her in good faith that she would never go behind my back and sleep with another man. Not only did she do that, but she also committed a criminal activity by setting his car on fire. She wailed and sobbed into the phone like it was her lifeline. I told her she made the decision to go behind my back, and anyone should know it's only a matter of time before the truth comes out. I just got lucky because her idiotic actions did the work for me. I wished her luck in whatever she tries to do next with her life. As I said that, she started screaming for me not to hang up, but I did. Her aunt contacted me 4 months later. She asked if she could bring a truck over to get my ex's belongings. I said that was fine, and she went on to explain that my ex's grandmother passed away and the house was in foreclosure, so my ex was moving in with her, and I'd finally get her crappy belongings out of my house. That sounded fine to me. I did wonder how she was holding up, but I didn't ask. By this point, I started seeing another woman and did not want to give any false hope by asking questions. I hope my story encourages everyone not to cheat on their partner. There are 2 things that helped me get through this ordeal the most. The first was exercising daily. I didn't want to do it, but I forced myself to use my muscles until I could feel the burn. It helped me to get out built-up anger and turned my attitude around for the better. I wasn't feeling down on myself. I was feeling positive and capable. The second thing I did was show myself love and care by doing what I wanted most of the time. It was listening to music and dancing. Other times it was reading, watching TV, drawing, playing music, or going for a walk. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I cheated on my husband. He pretended to forgive me, then made me feel what he felt. Now he's leaving me for the woman he used to make me jealous. I, 30F, cheated on my husband, 27M. He's taking it well, but I feel he resents me. I know I did something awful and disgusting, and when I couldn't take the guilt anymore, I cut off my affair partner and confessed everything to my husband. He got more upset and depressed than angry, and I begged for him to not divorce me. I proposed counseling, therapy, even allowing him to have sex with other women, but he wasn't interested. He said he wanted to try to work things out, and I jumped in, being the best wife a man can ask for. I cook his favorite dishes, leave him loving notes, and bought new lingerie to entice him. His reactions are, at best, tepid. He smiles and thanks me, but not once has he said he loves me since I confessed. He barely initiates anything, and I basically have to push myself on him. Not that he complains. Sometimes we talk about this, but I think I still lost the man I love. His behavior with me feels very artificial, and nothing changes his facade. I can be playful, I can be sad, I can get angry, and I can get seductive. His reaction is always this stupid smile and polite words. He was so emotional and sincere before all of this happened. I want him to let out his true emotions with me, even if he hates me. I still love him so much. What can I do to fix this? Now for some comments. Comment 1. Is this a troll post? If not, please share some details. How long have you been together? How long was the affair? Who is the other man? OP's response. We have been married for 5 years. My affair lasted a couple of months and it was with a client, independent farmer. Reply, okay, thank you. What do you mean by cutting off the affair? Is this person still a client? Do you still have business contact with him? Are you seeing a therapist? Do you know why you strayed? OP, I ended my relationship with the client and passed his contract to a coworker. No contact ever since. I've been doing individual therapy. I don't know why I did all this. My body felt like it was on autopilot. Update 1. He knows I cheated. We didn't separate, and I begged him not to divorce and let me fix this. He agreed, but his behavior since my confession has basically been one of indifference, like I wrote on my last post. I do my best to be the best wife he could ask for. I cook his favorite foods, get him gifts, screw his brains out every night. He just smiles and thanks me. He acts kind and never yells at me, but I feel his icy indifference under that mask of courtesy. 2 weeks ago, he started coming home late, very, very late, and when he does, he just goes to bed. I asked him what's going on, and he told me in the kindest way possible that it's not my business. I called him when he stayed out, and he picked up only once. I heard a woman laughing in the background. I am starting to think he is cheating back on me. It hurts. If he told me, at least I would do my best to stomach it. I deserve this after all, but he won't tell me, he just shuts me out. A common friend told me she spotted him in a car with a woman she didn't recognize. This felt like a stab in the heart. She said she couldn't describe her exactly because she wore big sunglasses, but she recognized my husband because of his particular taste in neckties. They were talking, but my friend said that from their position, it looked like they were holding hands, or one of them was touching the other's lap. I don't know what to do. If he is having an affair, I deserve it, but I need to know. The uncertainty is killing me. Should I confront him? Should I try to find out more? Update 2. He left me. I did like you guys said and begged him to talk to me. He didn't want to, but I cried and yelled so much I puked all over. He got softer with me. He helped me clean up, and we talked. I asked him if he was cheating on me, and he said he was talking with someone but didn't do anything with her. I asked if she was the woman my friend saw him with. He thought on it a little but said no. It was another woman whom he met a month ago in his office. I asked him how he could and said I gave him permission, and he didn't do anything besides unloading his problems in our situation with her, but he played it like he was having a full affair so I could feel what he felt, especially because, according to him, I neglected him and made it obvious I was cheating on him. He said he was suffering, and I was almost rubbing it in his face. I told him I wasn't doing it on purpose, and he said this was even worse because I didn't care at all. He said that everything I did after confessing meant nothing and just made him think I am selfish, self-centered, and lack any sort of self-respect. I asked him if we could work on ourselves and our marriage, but he said we can have counseling to sort ourselves out, but the marriage is over. He said he wishes no ill on me and decided to cut his charade because he could no longer bear to see the woman he once loved suffer like that. But he said I am no longer that woman. I started sobbing again, and he held me, but he kept saying no when I asked him if we could work this out. I asked him what he was going to do when he's moving out. He already found a new place. I asked him if he was going to live with that woman, and he said he wasn't, but she was close enough. I asked him how he could pick a total stranger he met a month ago over his wife of 5 years. He said his wife of 5 years no longer exists. He has to pick between 2 strangers, and that woman made a much better impression on him. I told him he was a fool and he could not know this woman will probably use and dump him. He got harsh and said she's better than me for sure. He said he won't say to our families our marriage ended because I cheated, but because we grew apart, and that he will leave the house to me as long as I make the divorce smooth. But if I try to take him to the cleaners, drag it out, or cause any problem, he will tell everyone what I did and destroy me and my reputation. This happened yesterday, and he has already packed up almost everything. I can't stop crying, and I can't believe this is happening. This is horrible and unfair. One last comment from OP, you guys are right saying that I suck, but he is at fault too. He never really wanted to fix this. He used me for months and then discarded me, and yet I want him back and to forgive and forget all the hurt we've done to each other. As for his girl, I don't think she will be good for him. Update 3. Got served divorce papers today. This feels like a nightmare. I keep telling myself it's not real and I'm going to wake up. My husband moved out 2 weeks ago, ostensibly to live with another woman, but I kept my eye on him, had some friends tell me what was going on, and seemingly there was no other woman at all. I hoped he was just collecting his thoughts and that he would come back to me, but today he did it. He had me served. I don't want to believe he is done with us. I love him so much, and I miss him every day. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My husband cheated on me while I'm pregnant, and I'm spiraling. In April, when I was 12 weeks pregnant, I found out that my F28 husband M28, had recently started cheating on me with a girl at his work, and I still haven't gotten over it. We've been married since the summer of 2018, but together since the summer of 2014. It's nearly our 9-year anniversary now, and I am currently 30 weeks pregnant with our first child. I always thought that if my partner ever cheated on me, I would be out the door in a hurry because it's a type of disrespect I could never stand for. However, I never thought it would happen to me, let alone after I had put 8.5 years into this man, plus a house, 2 cars, 2 dogs, a cat, and a baby we both wanted for many years at that point. I know I am more sensitive right now due to the pregnancy, but it's now August, and I am so tired of waking up hurting every day. After I found out, I confronted him, and he admitted that he had started sleeping with her and, at the time, had done so 3 times. I was in my first trimester, and he knew how sick I had been, literally spending all day, every day, throwing up. My morning sickness lasted until around dinner time usually, and sleeping. He has a job that has always kept him pretty busy, but he would always check in with me throughout the day. I work from home and am self-employed, making much less money than him, but it was something we had discussed in depth after the loss of my first pregnancy and agreed that me being home and dealing with the house and pets was something we should try. Plus, we both wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom whenever we did have a baby. So, while I make less, it was something we fully agreed on together. When he would check in, it was always so sweet. He called me in between meetings, on the road, driving, anytime he was free, and he would text me to announce his safe arrival every time he had to go anywhere. It was never a burden that I asked for him to check in because we both just naturally wanted to talk to each other all during free moments in the day, which is how our relationship had been for the entire duration. There was no asking at all, really. It's just how it was with us. I gave him another chance when I confronted him because I was so blindsided. It didn't make sense to me, and now it still doesn't, but I was 12 weeks along with a baby I had been wishing for years. We struggled with conceiving after our loss years ago, and I had a vision in my head of our family that I couldn't let go of. We agreed that he would go into work and end it with her the next morning, which he didn't think would be an issue because it was just sex and they had no feelings involved. Let it be known that this girl knew about me, and I had stopped in at his office many times for lunch visits with my husband, and he had photos of me on his computer desk, so there were constant reminders that I was real for both of them. He told me in later conversations that before the affair started, she would joke with him that I'm too hot for him and she planned on stealing me away. She apparently is bisexual with a heavy lean towards women, and when my husband would talk about her before the affair, I was told she was a lesbian that he and all the guys at work besides one found highly unattractive. What happened when he ended it with her is, I guess she took it all right, left, and then a few hours later came back and begged him to not leave her. He told me that she was crying and clinging to him, and there was something about abandonment issues that I truthfully did not care about because I was his partner of almost 9 years and carrying his child. He told me he had ended it, though. Next, he went to get tested. There was no crossover at all while this was going on, and he was clean. He showed me all test results, as this was an important stipulation, obviously. For the next month, I watched him leave every morning and broke down as soon as he left, sometimes begging before he went to work for him to call in sick and stay home with me. I was a wreck. We had a vacation planned for months before coming up in May, and I somehow thought it would be good for us to get away and just be the two of us. I was counting down the seconds till that trip, keeping everything I was going through just to myself and quickly deteriorating. In that month, I lost 22 pounds because I could not eat, and every time I did, I would throw up. My husband watched me in agony, a complete shell of who I once was, trying to grow our child and not being able to stomach food literally at all. It got so bad that my whole face broke out in what looked like hives from how hard my body was trying to throw up when there was nothing left inside me. Every day, little blood vessels popped all over my skin from sobbing and puking all day. We went on our trip, and it was painful. There were good times, but also I was still so broken and had no trust in him. This whole month-long period, I felt something was still off, but he gave me access to his phone, and I would check it in front of him and also whenever he was asleep or in the shower just to be sure. After the vacation, it got really, really bad for me. The intuition in my head that I felt back in April had never really gone away, but it was so incredibly loud that I felt like I was going crazy. He was telling me he loved me, reassuring me that it was really over with her, that he was going to be a good husband to me and the best father to our daughter, and no matter how much I wanted to believe him, there was something in me telling me he was lying. While he showered one morning, I went into the bathroom to pee, and his phone was sitting on his pile of work clothes for when he got out. I grabbed it and brought it with me for while I peed, thinking it would be like every other time where I looked at his phone and found nothing. Instead, in his WhatsApp, there was a thread of messages with her from the night before. The day before was a long workday for him. Something I dreaded even before the affair because being apart from him for crazy hours made me miss him, but knew there was no way to avoid. I remember I had offered to bring him food for lunch, even though we lived an hour away from the office, and he told me not to worry about driving, that he'll bribe one of the guys into bringing him something so I didn't have to waste the gas money. In reality, she was bringing him lunch, and he was texting her about it at the same time he was texting me. Those texts haunt me so badly, even now. She had told him, "I miss you," and he replied the same. So clearly, they had only progressed more in the last month when she was bringing him lunch. He told her, "I just want you and a burger." And then there were some hours later messages where they laughed about getting everyone out of the office inconspicuously so they could be alone, and she said, "Now I get to have you." Reading those messages, 16 weeks pregnant and first thing in the morning, quite literally made me want to die. When confronted, he promised me that they didn't have sex, even though it sounded like it would happen in those messages, but that he has still been sleeping with her, just not that day. I guess this was back in May. I left him the next day after I confronted him again, and he admitted that he never actually stopped. His story was half true. He says that when he spoke with her, she came back crying and begging and then apparently forced him into an empty office where she tried to go down on him. He promised me that he stopped her and shoved her away, but that she had gotten his pants down and gotten close enough to touch him before he got away from her. Nothing happened that day, he swore to me, but that in his mind it was over then because in our initial conversation I told him I would give him a second chance, but if he did this again I would leave him. He counted this as doing it again, even though when he broke down and told me this it sounded more like she assaulted him while he was saying no rather than him cheating another time, but he didn't see it that way at the time and thought I'd leave if he told me and figured he might as well not stop if I was just going to find out and leave him in the long run because he had already messed up. Now, fast forward to August. I have been living alone since May. I left him the day after I found out the second time, going to stay with my aunt for a few days with my dogs. I ended up coming back to the house and kicking him out because it didn't seem fair to me that everyone besides him had to suffer. Me being pregnant and hauling around two 6-year-old dogs who were very used to being homebodies and were confused and stopped eating due to the stress, plus our cat who is deeply bonded to me and is used to me being home with her all day, was now left alone while he was working for 10+ hours, and all of our animals are friends, so it was really up for everyone but my husband, who was the one who did the wrong thing. Anyways, so now I am 30 weeks pregnant, preparing to sell our house and move back into my dad's house with the 3 animals and my daughter when she is born, and I'm still so hurt. I really felt like this man was the love of my life and my soulmate. All of our friends who I've spoken to about our separation, I cannot afford a lawyer until the house sells, and I'm unfortunately a sorry excuse of a woman and SOB whenever I think of the word divorce, even though I know that has to be one of the steps I take down the line. I have been absolutely shocked due to how out of character this was of him. We were known as the couple that could handle anything together. My family was the same way because of how wonderful my husband was to me for 8.5 years. He was so emotionally supportive and sweet, and I like to think I was to him as well. I lost my mom who was my best friend, and we together lost our first baby, and he dealt with going no contact with his mother, and we were truly each other's rock for so long through all of those moments, just to name a few. And I'm carrying his daughter, who I love deeply already. I know he hurt me and changed me as a person, but it's so incredibly hard to forget the years of happiness I had with him and see that they're seemingly over now. The shitty thing is I would probably take him back if he came to me and said all the right things and made the right promises and made me believe him, but instead, I live alone while growing this baby and taking care of the animals we picked and have raised for 6 and 2 years together, dealing with this trauma by myself, and he is all but living with the girl he cheated on me with. Every time I drive past his apartment, her car is there, sometimes when even his car is gone. He promises that she doesn't have a key and that when the baby is born, she won't get in the way of him being a father. She hates children, babies, cats, and dogs. So clearly she's a super great person on top of knowingly sleeping with a married man. But at this point, it's been months of him knowing he's hurting me. We're still publicly married. His family has no idea of any of this. Only our mutual friends and my family know any of what's happened. though not with all the details I've put in this post. I should mention that when I did come face to face with this girl only once, she laughed at what she had done, and when I told her that she broke apart my family and took my daughter's father away before she was even born, she literally shrugged and muttered, "Yeah, I know," while looking so smug about it. I only say this because I know people will say to not blame the affair partner but only blame my husband, who was the one who broke his vows to me, but I fully blame them both. She knew what she was doing and so did he, and she seems to like knowing how powerful she was in this situation. He tells me often that he doesn't want to end our relationship but that right now, he isn't right for me. That he cannot be who he was because he effed up so badly that he doesn't know how to fix it. Now he's going with monogamy just isn't for him, even though he and his affair partner are living together, recreating the life we had, living very obviously in monogamy currently. It hurts so much because he's already replaced me with her. Some 20-year-old girl is sleeping beside my husband and having meals with him and sitting in his passenger seat. It just isn't how my life was supposed to go. I wish so much that I could stay firm on hating him because, trust me that I do, and I've had several hours over the last few months where I make sure he knows what he did to me and how much I hate him for ruining the woman I was before this betrayal, but I also love him still and I want the family I was all but promised. We couldn't get pregnant for nearly 3 years, and the month I did get pregnant, I literally told him, if it doesn't happen for us, it doesn't happen. I wanted to be a mom, but if it's not in the cards, I will come to terms with it, and I know I can be fulfilled in our relationship without a baby. And then I shockingly did get pregnant and I felt like it was all falling into place finally, that we would be happy and us like I pictured, but now with a little baby we both daydreamed about for years. I'm really unsure how Reddit works and I know this post is so long so no one probably read it and I don't really know why I wrote it here anyways. I know in this situation he is in the wrong, and I don't need anyone to point it out to me, and I also don't want anyone calling me names for still loving this man who has disrespected and mistreated me so immensely over the last 4 months. It's just coming up on our anniversary, and I am desperately lonely in this quiet house that I now have to pack up all by myself, and I wanted a place to put my feelings. If you comment, please be nice. I feel stupid and weak enough as it is. I've been with him since we were both barely 19 and moved straight from my childhood home into an apartment with him. I've not spent a single adult year alone, and I'm just really sad all the time and don't know what to do. I try to go no contact with him, but we're selling a house, and I'm in my 3rd trimester with his baby. I just hate him and I hate myself. I want him to wake up and see what he's doing, but I don't think he ever will because he has to avoid the accountability of his actions, and it's not like I could ever trust him again anyways. But now I have to co-parent a child with him for the next several years, and I don't feel strong enough for any of the future anymore. I don't get how he could do this to me. Update 10 months later. If you don't want to read the whole post, the synopsis is essentially that my F28 husband, M28, cheated on me after 8.5 years together while I was 12 weeks pregnant with our first child. It's now June 11th, and my daughter just turned 8 months old. My water broke, and I drove myself to the hospital and then labored and gave birth alone. My daughter was born 2 weeks early, only, and she was completely healthy and had no issues. She is doing amazing, and the love I have for her is so all-encompassing that sometimes I don't even know what to do. She's a great baby and is so loved by not just myself but my dad, my brothers, my aunt. She is adored by my whole family, and because we live with my dad, her birth has brought all of us together closer than we've been in a long, long time. I absolutely love being her mom. My ex-husband was served divorce papers in February by my dad, who volunteered to be the one to do it, and our divorce was finalized in May. The way that my feelings for him changed almost in an instant after I had given birth to my daughter was shocking. But it was like as soon as she was born, just the thought of this man disgusted me. He visits for about an hour a week, once a week, and has done since she's been born. We have a parenting plan in the works, but every time it's drawn up by my lawyer, he finds something else that's wrong with it and chooses to not sign it. It's been very irritating having to deal with this man who I once loved and now don't recognize and watch as he pretends on social media that he is an active, attentive father when I've done quite literally everything for this baby, and he has the barest minimum he can get away with. This next part may be very shocking, but the girl he cheated on me with and moved into an apartment with directly from our marital home ended up cheating on him literally within the same week that our divorce finalized, and she was kicked out of his place. It took about a year, but he did come back groveling after all, which was absolutely wild to me. Now for the actual shocking part of this update. I have met a man after spending my entire pregnancy alone and heartbroken. I had sworn off men and relationships, and then this one just kind of appeared in my life. I have horrible trust issues now, and it's been really hard considering the deep betrayal that happened to me last year. But my boyfriend is the most gentle, calm, understanding guy I could have found. We met when my daughter was 2 months old, and he started taking me on little weekend dates for just a couple of hours at a time and was always very considerate of me having a newborn, which he reassured me several times over that it was not an issue, and he actually has experience working with kids in the past. Then in March, we had the conversation and defined the relationship. In these 6 months, he has met my family and has become one of my daughter's favorite people. I've met his brother and sister-in-law, and when his parents come into town later this month, he's introducing me, and we're all getting dinner together. I feel lucky to have this man in my life and a stable father figure for my daughter, and I am really hoping he is actually who he's been showing me he is. Obviously, when my ex-husband came to apologize and cry for what he'd done to me, I was already very locked in with my boyfriend, but even if I hadn't been, the answer would have been no. Our house has not yet sold, and I'm kind of losing my mind about it, but there's nothing to really be done to help that matter. And I know this may sound like revenge porn, but I promise it's not. Karma has just been working hard for me and my little bean. My boyfriend is great and makes me believe in love again. He is so handsome and so sweet and the complete opposite of who my ex-husband ended up being. I am really hoping he is a good egg because I accidentally fell in love with him when I didn't mean to, but I do now know that I was strong enough to leave a marriage with a baby on the way, so if he ends up screwing me over, I know I'll be strong enough to leave him too. The fact that my ex's affair partner cheated on him absolutely tickles me, to be completely honest. I'm still living with my dad plus my 2 dogs and cat that he abandoned me with during my pregnancy. But honestly, it could absolutely be worse. My dad helps as much as he can and loves his grandbaby so much. And it's been so sweet watching him turn into this absolute softie of a grandpa. I don't know if anyone remembers me, my post, or if this update is necessary at all, but here it is. I am big time not in love with the guy who cheated on me, left me, and is an absent father to the baby I grew all on my own and raise all on my own. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I became the sole provider for my girlfriend, who is now jobless, unmotivated, and chronically online. But I'm ready to end it. I, 24, met a girl, 22F, in a community college class when I was 20. We came from very different backgrounds. I was middle class, trying to find a cheaper way to go to college. She was living in almost poverty, going to school because she was forced to by her parents, who were threatening to kick her out. She dropped out about a year into her schooling, while I continued and finished. During her first year, we formed a relationship and she moved into my apartment. More or less, her relationship with her parents is pretty much non-existent, and she has little to no outside friends besides 1 or 2 women she knew from high school who are deadbeats, in my opinion. I make around $80,000 a year, so we live relatively comfortably, but there's still some strain on finances. I can't say exactly when I started losing feelings, but the fact that she refuses to work, will not cook, and wants to eat out every day, does not want to go to school, and continuously wants to buy and spend money on clothes and other stuff just slowly started grating me more and more. I work in a female-dominated workplace, and having conversations and interacting with coworkers who have so much going for them, have fun hobbies, and aspirations makes it all the more worse when your girlfriend is chronically online and spends 7 hours a day scrolling through Instagram or TikTok reels and thinks having sex is all she needs to do on her end. Our relationship isn't bad. We have fights every now and then, like an average couple, and have an active sex life, but that's pretty much it from her perspective. If I broke up with her, it would be out of nowhere, but I'm pretty much done and know I could move on quickly and have nothing to be regretful about, as shitty as it sounds. The problem comes in her having no job, no finances, almost no friends, and no family support unit. I'm not a monster. I don't want to make someone virtually homeless, but I don't want to be stuck with someone who has nothing going for them either. I don't know what to do. Update 1. When I made that post, I was having an extremely bad day and didn't expect it to blow up like it did, so I don't think I was able to give her a fair defense. Also, I got dozens of messages ranging from asking me to hand out her contact info, so they could take her in as a live-in girlfriend, to helpful advice telling me to start hiding anything valuable. When I had said that she had come from poverty, her father is a laborer, while her mother also lives a similar lifestyle to how she lives now. Their home is maybe 1,100 square feet and in a terrible place in town, and given her father's past ultimatum, I don't think he will take her back, as she hasn't been back home in years. Yes, I have talked to her about this since January, maybe 3 times, either by gently telling her it would be nice if she went out more to find a hobby at the very least, to flat out saying she was wasting away on her phone and that she needs to get a job or go back to school. Each time, she either changed the subject, made it a joke, or followed through for a couple of days before going back to her usual self. She is a kind partner who asks me about my day, always tries to make me laugh or lighten the mood when I get annoyed, and generally shows a lot of affection, which makes me feel terrible when none of that works anymore, and I just see her as another person now. For the confrontation last night, when we were both getting ready for bed, I didn't take my clothes off and instead just stood there telling her we needed to talk. At first, she was just smiling and jumping up and down on the bed with her knees, thinking I wasn't as serious as I was, but eventually, she was able to read the mood. I told her something wasn't feeling right anymore, that I've tried to make this work and be patient with her for the past few years, but I didn't know how much more time I was willing to spend waiting for her to get a job, go back to school, or just get a hobby, if anything. I told her that it annoyed and grated me that she just didn't seem to care about herself and that I hated she had no goals or aspirations. This was probably the first time in a long time she was as attentive as she's ever been during this conversation and agreed to whatever I was saying, even giving suggestions on where she can apply, what courses were starting to interest her, and even said I could look over her as she submitted applications online to make sure she wasn't lying. In her head, it seemed like I was still willing to make this work, and a part of me believed this would finally be the moment that she would change, so it made the next part even harder for me and for her. At first, I told her I didn't love her the same way, which slowly but eventually led to me saying I didn't feel anything at all about this relationship and was jaded. I was tired and wanted a fresh start with someone who was more goal-oriented and wanted something more out of life. When she realized what I was getting at, she started to cry and asked why I didn't mention this sooner, and I said I've always asked her to cook, to go out with me, to try something out, or to just go back to school, even when I offered to pay for her classes. Anything she said, she understands that part, but was upset why I didn't say it was leading to me losing interest in her because, from her perspective, it seemed as if I still loved her all the same. She started apologizing, saying she wasn't in the right mental state and saying nothing was motivating her, and she genuinely had no interest in any hobbies. The only thing she liked was spending time with me, which is all she looked forward to in the day when I came home. None of this was really affecting my emotions besides making me feel uncomfortable, so I tried to continue by saying I think her lifestyle would be better with another person. But she immediately cut me off and became more panicked. She started to apologize again for what she's done and said she would be a better girlfriend, that she would go with me tomorrow to wherever I wanted to go and would look for courses in August that she could start doing. But she did not want to lose me since she had nothing else in life and absolutely hated that I stopped loving her. There were so much tears and snot that I said we would have this conversation again when she calmed down, and we eventually did in an hour or so. She pleaded to give her 2 months to make a change and give her another chance and promised that she would change again. She listed off all the places she would apply to and said she would be a better partner. I never wanted to make her homeless, so this seemed like a good settlement, even though I still had my doubts. I then reaffirmed that I wanted to see other people, but she seemed much more adamant on this issue than the aspirations issue that she would be able to fix this. She said just give her a month to try and make the relationship work and asked me again and again on what she could do to make me love her again and that she didn't want me to hate her. She said that this was the worst part of it all, the only person that she had just being done. It seemed as if she was about to break down again, so I said okay, we'll see how this relationship is in a month. In my mind, if I'm allowing her 2 months to get back on her feet, then by a month she would already be ready to move on. I also didn't want her to suffer a complete mental breakdown while I was still living with her, so giving her a month to let her fix the relationship would give her enough time to accept things. I slept on the couch last night and will probably continue doing so for a while. She came out at about 3 a.m., wanting to talk some more, but I said I was exhausted and we would do it tomorrow. She then slept on the floor beside me for the rest of the night, apologizing again. When I told her to stop, she silently said okay and sobbed for a bit under her blanket. Update 2. I want everyone who has private messaged me to know I read them all, especially those of you who have gone through similar circumstances as me and have shared your stories. I've been doing some self-reflecting and think I know how I want to go about this that will help with my lack of communication skills. I know I'm not a perfect person, but I still stand by my decisions I made that night 100% through and through. I might post an update sooner, in a week or so, as the day after our fight I am filled with a bit more hope than usual. Don't know how long it will last, but better make use of it. But again, just wanted to post this for everyone sharing your stories with me privately, as I can't message you all, as it's been helping me make decisions on what to do about this immensely. Hello, I have a partner who wants to start taking an interest in baking. She's a bit self-conscious and doesn't like asking or looking for outside help, and I'm kind of clueless in the subject, but I want to be able to find a resource to give some help for her. Update 3. After the night confrontation, we didn't really speak all too much at home, with it being dry and awkward for a day or two, but I have been told I'm a workaholic by nature, so it was easy for me to stay at the hospital as a distraction. But in that time, she did start to cook again. We weren't in the mood to go out to eat together. Eventually, though, I sat down with her after she asked for a more thorough conversation on why I felt our relationship was failing. She promised not to cry or get upset, but wanted me to be 100% upfront, so she had a better way of understanding, stating she wanted to try everything to fix this. I was really apprehensive about this, and I can't really explain why, but given being together for 4 years, I wanted to at least make an effort myself out of respect, even though a large part of me was angry for even doing so, as I feel I've never had the same from her. There have been many different camps in my last update, the main ones being, kick her out immediately and leave her before it gets worse, try to find a way to fix our relationship, or end the relationship altogether but continue living with someone who would probably become absolutely neurotic if I was going to let her stay for 2 months. I would absolutely not be dealing with that. I took consideration of all these main advice discussions and read through almost every reply, even the most assumptive, bizarre, and downright unhinged Redditor takes. More importantly, I took heavy influence from those who have shared with me their past stories, which either led to them being stuck in loveless relationships for years or eventually being able to overcome their problems and have an even stronger connection. Thank you again for your private messages. I read through a lot of your lives. Now for our conversation. She said she saw something on TikTok where couples put a phone on a table with a timer and wanted to do something similar for each person to air what made them upset. I said that was dumb. If we were going to talk about our problems, it would be better if there was no time limit. She eventually agreed and said I could go first, asking me first when was the time that I completely lost my love for her. As I said before, it was never one action but a grating feeling that got worse and worse until it got to this point, and I told her that. So she then asked when was the time I felt the most angry. I said it would take some time to think for me, and she said that was fine. After a few minutes, something came to mind. I couldn't formulate the right words at first, but it eventually just started to come out. I told her the worst time was when I was first starting at my hospital. To keep it short, the tempo was brutal. It was constant work with little to no downtime, as I was constantly learning new things that school would have never taught me while being expected to be able to handle it as a professional. It was without a doubt the most stressed I've ever been, and I feel like other RNs can relate. That year hardened the way I think now that hard work does pay off if you have the drive and the passion. I told her I think it was when I started losing feelings the fastest, seeing her at home doing absolutely nothing, coming home to no food made, to her not working a job, to her not learning anything, completely stuck to the internet with nothing to show for it. I said it made me even more upset when I had given suggestions for jobs with pretty easy schedules or to find a new interest in school that would pan out better than last time, only to be rejected at my every attempt. I told her flat out that it disgusted me. She asked me why I didn't make this a bigger issue at the time, that I should have communicated this to her. But I said there's something that shouldn't have to be said. I shouldn't have to remind her to wash her ass, eat, do something other than mindlessly scrolling on her phone for hours a day, every day. I also told her that after coming home from the hospital during more stressful days, the last thing I wanted was to spend my time begging my girlfriend to do something productive. So I held my tongue and settled as she was still nice and caring. I had no other reasons to end it, and so the resentment grew worse from then on. It was around here that I became more mean, to my regret now, but I will still input it as I have everything else. I told her that when she dropped nursing, I was upset since I felt that she was more than capable of doing what I had done. But after spending more time in the relationship and spending more time getting to know her, I knew that with the type of person she was, There was no way she could have ever finished, which is why I suggested easier and more laid-back jobs or less demanding majors for school. Even if she just cooked or found an interesting hobby at that point, I would have appreciated it. Still, she chose to do nothing for years. It's just the type of person she was and why I felt done for her romantically over time. She asked me if I hated her, and I said I didn't know. I told her she was very loving and kind, but I hated how she handled her life to this point, that I felt no ill will towards her after airing everything out, but I also felt nothing else. I just felt done and ready to move on. Throughout this conversation, we kept eye contact, and there were times it seems like she would break. But like she said, she remained as calm as she could while I said what I had to say. I told her I was done and she could say her piece now, but she asked if we could continue the conversation later and locked herself in our room for the rest of the day. The next day, we sat down again and finished the conversation. She told me that she thinks she's depressed, saying that she didn't feel sad before that night, just had no motivation to do anything. I had a couple of messages telling me to ask her to get tested for ADHD, but when I started bringing it up, she was very adamant that is not something she felt comfortable with. I knew she didn't like needles or going to the hospital in general, but her flat-out refusing to get tested for disorders when I told her it was not at all like a regular hospital visit surprised me. She asked me if she was able to change her behaviors, would I give her another chance? I said I didn't know, as I felt nothing right now and didn't know if her doing it would bring any feeling back, especially since it took my breaking point to do so. She asked if there was any compromise, and I told her again, if in a month I felt like there was enough reason to stay together, I would, but that there was no guarantee that my feelings would return, but I would match any effort she also put out. She was frustrated by my answer, but I said that's how it would be. She gave me a piece of paper to look at that she was working on last night that had a list of hobbies and interests she wanted to look into, the two major ones being photography and cooking again. She told me that she was looking into these while also showing me her phone, giving proof that she was putting in applications on Indeed and Glassdoor for some entry-level positions that she might get hired in. I told her if she was able to show enough passion or interest in these hobbies that she showed, I would not care about her working, just anything to improve herself, but if she didn't do anything at all, then it would be best to look for a new job to help her if she moves out. I've also been asked in private messages if I have any personal friends to talk to. There are 2 female coworkers I can confide in, and given how many hours we work together at our hospital and who I completely trust, are in my opinion extremely grounded. They both said I would eventually get love-bombed and this would all go back to how it once was and that I needed to stand firm with moving on. They are very helpful friends who have even offered to let me stay over for a few nights, giving the reason that I would fall for her manipulation if I continued being anywhere near her, in their own words. But it didn't feel right since I'm still technically in a relationship, but I said I would consider it if the situation worsened. But again, I find them grounded, so I always try to take their advice to heart. Despite numerous messages from you all privately or openly telling me that this will be a mistake, I want to make the attempt to give this one last try, though I feel heavily closed and guarded and still feel indifferent with our current situation. But a lot of you have told me this can eventually change with enough work from both parties. I have also taken the advice of those saying to cut off sex, which was my intention from the start anyway, by continuing to sleep in the living room. But each day she has been sleeping on the floor right below me, even when I tell her I'd rather be alone with my thoughts, telling me this is something she would not accept. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My husband cheated and got his coworker pregnant. Then he suggested we raise the baby together. I contacted the mistress, and now he's lost everything. I, 32F, had been married to Jasper, 35M, for 6 years, but our story goes back much further. We met during our sophomore year of college, at a mutual friend's party. I remember it vividly. I was wearing my favorite blue dress, and Jasper walked in with a confident smile that immediately caught my attention. We spent the entire night talking about everything, from our childhood dreams to our favorite books. By the end of the night, I knew there was something special about him. Our relationship blossomed quickly. We'd spend hours studying together in the library, sneaking glances at each other over our textbooks. Jasper was majoring in finance while I was pursuing marketing. We'd often joke about how we'd make the perfect power couple in the business world someday. After graduation, we both landed entry-level jobs in the same city. Felt like fate was pushing us together. We decided to move in together, splitting the rent on a tiny one-bedroom apartment downtown. Those early days were magical. We'd come home from our jobs exhausted, but excited to see each other. We cooked dinner together. Well, Jasper would cook and I'd attempt to help. Talked about our days and dreamed about our future. 2 years into living together, Jasper proposed. It was a surprise getaway to the beach where we had our first vacation together. He got down on one knee at sunset, sand sticking to his jeans, and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but perfect. We exchanged vows in a quaint chapel, surrounded by our closest friends and family. I can still picture Jasper's face as I walked down the aisle. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. The first few years of our marriage were wonderful. We both focused on our careers, supporting each other through late nights and stressful projects. Jasper quickly climbed the corporate ladder, becoming a senior financial analyst at a prestigious firm. I found my niche in digital marketing, eventually becoming a marketing manager for a tech startup. We had always agreed that we didn't want children. It was a decision we made early in our relationship and reaffirmed several times throughout our marriage. We enjoyed our freedom, the ability to travel on a whim, and the focus we could put into our careers and personal interests. We even joked about being the cool aunt and uncle to our friends' kids. About 8 months ago, I started noticing changes in Jasper. It was subtle at first. He'd come home later than usual, citing work emergencies. He became more protective of his phone, always keeping it face down or in his pocket. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became vague and dismissive. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Jasper had always been honest with me, and I trusted him completely. But as the weeks went by, the distance between us grew. Our weekly date nights became less frequent, and when we did spend time together, Jasper seemed distracted and distant. One Friday evening, Jasper came home looking visibly upset. His tie was loosened, and his usually neatly combed hair was disheveled. I asked him what was wrong, and he broke down crying. What he told me next shattered my world. Jasper confessed that he had been having an affair with his coworker, Melody, 28F, for the past 6 months. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The man I had trusted with my heart, the person I thought I knew better than anyone else, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. But that wasn't even the worst part. Jasper then revealed that Melody was 3 months pregnant with his child. I felt the room spin around me. Not only had Jasper cheated on me, but he had also gotten another woman pregnant. Something we had both agreed we didn't want in our own marriage. I was furious and heartbroken. I told Jasper to leave and pack a bag. I couldn't bear to look at him. I called my best friend, Sabrina, 33F, in tears and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. Sabrina, bless her, didn't hesitate. She came to pick me up within the hour. The next few days were a blur. I alternated between crying, raging, and feeling completely numb. Sabrina was my rock, listening to me, even bringing me comfort food and assuring me that none of this was my fault. Meanwhile, Jasper kept calling and texting, begging for forgiveness and saying he'd end things with Melody. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed time to process everything. After a week, I agreed to meet Jasper to talk things through. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near our apartment. Jasper looked terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes and seemed to have lost weight. He started by apologizing profusely, saying the affair was a huge mistake and that he wanted to make things right. Then, to my utter disbelief, Jasper dropped another bombshell. He said he had been thinking about the situation and had come up with a solution. He proposed that we stay married, and once Melody had the baby, we would raise it together. He said Melody wasn't ready to be a mother and had agreed to let us adopt the child. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jasper actually expected me to raise his child with his mistress. I asked him if he was out of his mind. He tried to justify it by saying it would solve everything. He wouldn't have to leave me, and we could have a family like he always secretly wanted. This revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. Jasper had lied about not wanting children. All those conversations we had, all those times we reaffirmed our decision not to have kids, had they all been lies? I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I told Jasper absolutely not and that I wanted a divorce. Jasper became desperate, saying he'd do anything to make it work. He even suggested that Melody could move in with us temporarily, so we could all adjust to the situation. The audacity of his suggestion made me feel sick. At this point, I'd had enough. I stood up, told Jasper he was delusional, and left the cafe. On my way home, I couldn't stop thinking about Melody. Did she know about Jasper's insane plan? Did she really agree to give up her baby? Or was Jasper manipulating her too? I decided Melody deserved to know the truth. I still had her contact information from a company holiday party last year. With shaking hands, I composed a long email detailing everything Jasper had told me, including his plan for us to raise the baby together. Melody replied quickly, and her response confirmed my suspicions. She had no idea about Jasper's plan and never agreed to give up her baby. She was shocked and upset, saying Jasper had promised to leave me and start a new life with her and their child. When Jasper found out I had contacted Melody, he went ballistic. He showed up at Sabrina's apartment, pounding on the door and yelling that I had ruined everything. He accused me of trying to turn Melody against him and sabotaging any chance of reconciliation. Sabrina threatened to call the police, and Jasper finally left, but not before warning me that I'd regret this. I've blocked Jasper on everything, and I'm still staying with Sabrina while I figure out my next steps. I'm meeting with a divorce lawyer next week to start the process. The life I thought I had, the future I had planned, it's all gone. I feel lost and betrayed, but I know I can't stay with Jasper after everything that's happened. So, Reddit, I'm asking for advice. Did I do the right thing by telling Melody about Jasper's plan and potentially ruining any chance of reconciliation? I feel like I did the right thing, but Jasper's reaction has me second-guessing everything. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your words have been a lifeline during this turbulent time, reminding me that I'm not alone in this struggle. After my initial post, I met with a divorce lawyer recommended by Sabrina. Her name is Evelyn, and she's been practicing family law for over 20 years. From the moment I walked into her office, I felt a sense of relief. Evelyn listened to my story without judgment, her experienced eyes taking in every detail. She helped me understand my rights and options, breaking down the complex legal jargon into terms I could understand. We started the divorce proceedings, and while it felt surreal signing those papers, I also felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. Evelyn assured me that, given the circumstances, we had a strong case. She advised me to gather all financial documents and any evidence of Jasper's affair and erratic behavior. I spent the next few days combing through emails, text messages, and bank statements, feeling like a detective in my own life. About a week after meeting with Evelyn, I received a surprise message from Melody. My heart raced as I read her words, asking if we could meet in person to talk. I was hesitant at first. The thought of facing the woman who had been with my husband made my stomach churn. But curiosity and a need for closure won out, and I agreed to meet her at a local park. The day of the meeting, I arrived early, my nerves on edge. When I saw Melody approach, I was struck by how young and vulnerable she looked. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she walked with the careful gait of someone in the early stages of pregnancy. We sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, the sound of ducks quacking filling the awkward silence between us. Suddenly, Melody burst into tears, apologizing profusely for her part in the affair. Between sobs, she explained that Jasper had pursued her relentlessly at work. He would bring her coffee every morning, offer to help with her projects, and always seemed to be there when she was having a tough day. Melody revealed that Jasper had told her our marriage was essentially over and that he was planning to leave me soon. As Melody spoke, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger at Jasper's manipulation, sympathy for Melody's situation, and a deep sadness for the life I thought I had. Melody shared that Jasper had told her I knew about their relationship and was okay with it because I didn't want children. She was shocked when she received my email and realized the extent of Jasper's lies. But what Melody revealed next chilled me to the bone. Since I had exposed Jasper's plan, He had become increasingly controlling and aggressive towards her. He was pressuring her to get an abortion, saying it was the only way to save our marriage. Melody showed me text messages from Jasper, filled with manipulative language and veiled threats. She was terrified and didn't know what to do. Despite my complicated feelings towards Melody, I couldn't help but feel protective of her and her unborn child. I shared the contact information for a women's support group and offered to help her find resources if she needed them. As we parted ways, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at Jasper, sympathy for Melody, and a renewed determination to free myself from this toxic situation. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Jasper's behavior became even more erratic. He started showing up at my workplace, trying to corner me in the parking lot to explain things. I had to involve HR, who were surprisingly supportive and implemented extra security measures. Jasper also began appearing at Sabrina's apartment at odd hours, forcing us to call the police on 2 occasions. Through all of this, I've been focusing on taking care of myself. Sabrina suggested I see a counselor, and I've been having weekly sessions with Dr. Ramirez. She's been helping me process my emotions and develop coping strategies for dealing with the stress and anxiety. I've also thrown myself into my work, which has been a welcome distraction. My boss, understanding my situation, has been incredibly supportive, even offering me a chance to lead a new project. I've been spending more time with friends and family, rediscovering parts of myself that I had neglected during my marriage. I've started painting again, something I used to love but gave up when life got busy. The act of putting brush to canvas has been incredibly therapeutic, allowing me to express emotions I can't put into words. As for the divorce proceedings, they're moving forward, albeit slowly. Jasper is contesting the divorce, claiming that my interference in his relationship with Melody is grounds for a fault divorce. Evelyn assures me his claims are baseless, but it's still frustrating to deal with these delays. Melody and I have had a few more conversations. She's decided to keep the baby and is looking into her options as a single mother. While I can't forgive her for her part in the affair, I do hope she finds a way to create a stable life for herself and her child, far away from Jasper. As I write this update, I'm sitting in the spare room at Sabrina's apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes of my belongings. It's not where I imagined I'd be at this point in my life, but I'm trying to see it as a fresh start rather than an ending. The road ahead is still long and uncertain, but for the first time in months, I feel a glimmer of hope for the future. I'll post another update when there are significant developments in the divorce proceedings, or if anything major happens with Jasper or Melody. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the situation has evolved in ways I never expected. I apologize for the delay in updating, but things have been incredibly hectic, and I've been trying to process everything that's happened. First, an update on the divorce proceedings. They're moving forward, albeit with some bumps along the way. Jasper initially tried to contest the divorce, claiming that I was at fault for interfering in his relationship with Melody. He even tried to argue that, by informing Melody of his plans, I had breached his privacy and trust. Thankfully, Evelyn, my lawyer, shut that down quickly. She pointed out that Jasper's infidelity and subsequent behavior were more than enough grounds for a fault divorce in our state. We're now in the process of negotiating the division of assets, which has been contentious to say the least. Jasper is trying to claim a larger share of our joint savings, arguing that his higher salary contributed more to our wealth. Evelyn is fighting hard for me, pointing out that my support of Jasper's career, including moving cities for his job promotion 3 years ago, directly contributed to his higher earnings. Now for the more surprising developments. About a month ago, I received a call from Melody. Her voice was shaky, and she asked if we could meet urgently. Concerned, I agreed to meet her at a local coffee shop the next day. When Melody arrived, I was shocked by her appearance. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, there were dark circles under her eyes, and she seemed to have lost weight, which was concerning given her pregnancy. As soon as she sat down, she burst into tears. Between sobs, Melody revealed that Jasper had been harassing her constantly since our last meeting. She showed me her phone, which was filled with messages from Jasper. They ranged from desperate pleas for her to get back together with him to angry rants blaming her for ruining his life to chilling threats about her job and her safety if she didn't cooperate. One message particularly stood out. Jasper had written, "If you don't get rid of that baby, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. You'll never feel safe again." The timestamp showed it was sent at 2 a.m. just a few days ago. Melody was terrified. She said Jasper had shown up at her workplace several times, causing scenes that had put her job at risk. He'd also been seen lurking around her apartment complex, leading her to stay with a friend out of fear for her safety. As I listened to Melody, I felt a mixture of horror, anger, and guilt. Despite my complicated feelings towards her, I knew I had to help. No one deserved to live in fear like this, especially not someone who was pregnant and vulnerable. I encouraged Melody to file a police report and seek a restraining order against Jasper. When she hesitated, scared of potential repercussions, I offered to go with her to the police station for moral support. She agreed, relief evident in her eyes. The next day, we went to the police station together. It was a surreal experience, standing beside the woman my husband had an affair with, united in our fear of a man I once loved. The officer who took our statement, a kind-faced woman named Officer Chun, listened intently and took detailed notes. She seemed particularly concerned about the threatening messages and Jasper's stalking behavior. Based on the evidence Melody provided, the police issued a temporary restraining order against Jasper, pending a court hearing. Officer Chun also suggested that Melody consider pressing harassment charges, given the nature and frequency of Jasper's messages. When Jasper found out about the restraining order, he completely lost it. He showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby. He was yelling about how I had turned everyone against him and ruined his life. Security had to escort him out, and my boss suggested I work from home for a few days until things calmed down. My company has been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They've offered counseling services and have been flexible with my work arrangements. They even hired additional security for the office, just in case Jasper tries to come back. In a twisted way, Jasper's erratic behavior has actually made the divorce proceedings easier for me. His actions have clearly demonstrated his instability, and Evelyn is confident this will work in my favor when it comes to the final settlement. She's documenting every incident, building a strong case for why I should be awarded a larger share of our assets. As for Melody, we've developed an unexpected alliance. While I can't say we're friends, we're supporting each other through this difficult time. She's now 5 months pregnant and has decided to keep the baby. She's also looking into legal options to ensure Jasper can't have any custody or contact with the child once it's born. I've been focusing on healing and moving forward. The painting I started as a form of therapy has become a real passion. I've even sold a few pieces at a local art fair, which has been a huge boost to my confidence. I've also joined a support group for people going through divorces, and it's been helpful to connect with others who understand what I'm going through. The road ahead is still long, but I'm starting to feel hopeful about the future. I'll post another update when the divorce is finalized or if there are any major developments with Jasper or Melody. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm cautiously optimistic to report that there's finally some closure to this whole ordeal. First, the big news. The divorce has been finalized. Despite Jasper's attempts to drag out the process, the judge ruled largely in my favor. His erratic behavior and the evidence of his affair worked against him. I was awarded a fair share of our assets and a fair portion of our joint assets. It's not about the money for me. It's about closing this chapter of my life and having the resources to start anew. As for Jasper, he's facing some serious consequences for his actions. The restraining order Melody and I filed against him became permanent after he violated it multiple times. He's also been charged with harassment and is awaiting trial. His company found out about his behavior and fired him, citing a violation of their code of conduct. Melody gave birth to a healthy baby boy 2 months ago. She's decided to raise him on her own and has moved to another state to be closer to her family. We still keep in touch occasionally, and she seems to be doing well, all things considered. She's pursuing legal action to terminate Jasper's parental rights, given his history of threats and harassment. As for me, I'm in a much better place now. The divorce and everything that came with it was undoubtedly the most challenging experience of my life, but I've come out stronger. I've maintained my focus on self-care and personal growth. I've been promoted at work, taking on more responsibilities in our digital marketing strategies. I've also started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it feels good to know that I'm ready to open myself up to new possibilities. I met a nice guy named Alex at my painting class, and we've been on a few casual dates. It's refreshing to spend time with someone who respects me and shows genuine interest in my thoughts and feelings. My relationship with my family and friends has grown stronger through this experience. They've been my support system, and I'm incredibly grateful for their love and understanding. Sabrina, in particular, has been a rock throughout this entire ordeal. I don't know how I would have made it through without her. Looking back, I'm glad I made the decision to tell Melody about Jasper's plan. While it led to a tumultuous few months, it ultimately saved both of us from further manipulation and potential danger. It wasn't an easy choice, but I believe it was the right one. This whole experience has taught me a lot about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I'm looking forward to this new chapter in my life, free from the toxicity and deceit that defined the last year. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and kind words helped me more than you know. While I hope never to have to post in this subreddit again, I'm grateful for the community I found here during one of the most challenging times of my life. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I was shocked when my normally non-traditional Muslim boyfriend demanded I wear a headscarf for engagement, contradicting his original stance. My boyfriend, 28 male, is a Muslim. He usually is not very traditional. We don't live in a Muslim country. The other day, he told me that as soon as we get engaged, I will need to wear a headscarf to cover my hair. I am very proud of my long, wavy hair, and a headscarf is absolutely out of the question, and he knows that. When we first met, he even told me that he doesn't like that tradition and that his girlfriend will never have to wear one. Now yesterday, we had a real fight about it. His parents want us to get engaged, and engagement means the future bride has to cover her hair. It got a heated argument, and I ended it with, I will wear the damn thing as soon as you grow your foreskin back. He left without saying a word and went to his parents' place. Silence since then. Edit 1. I will not wear a headscarf. If that means that the engagement isn't going to happen, then it will not happen. 2. I got downvoted for stating that I love him. Please keep in mind that the fight is less than 24 hours ago, and I miss him. We had a very good relationship for 1.5 years and never fought before. We were planning on moving in together after getting engaged. 3. I will not convert to his religion. He knows that, and his mother seemed fine with it. His father never said anything about it. I am Christian and will stay Christian. 4. People assume that his family is behind the headscarf idea. I am not sure about it, but it might be possible. If they are, they were good at hiding it since they never said anything. 5. His family immigrated 3 generations ago into the mostly Christian country we live in. He himself never visited the country, Libya. His great-grandparents on his father's side came from there. The family on his mother's side, I don't know. We met at the animal shelter 2 years ago. He came from a 12-hour shift at his job and volunteered to bottle feed the kittens overnight. I was cleaning the cat area at that time. This was how we met. We were friends at first. After about 5 months, we started dating. I knew he was Muslim and didn't want to date him because of all the stereotypes. But he assured me that his girlfriend will never have to be traditional or modest or wear a headscarf. Even eating pork was no problem. We went to the beach together. I was wearing a bikini, no issues. I didn't care about his religion since he didn't seem to care. I fell in love with him as a person, not him as a Muslim. Update 1. Alright, this is all complicated. I called my boyfriend this morning. He didn't answer. His mother did. I told her that I would like him to come get his stuff from my place since this relationship will not work out any longer. She told me that he came home yesterday, all quiet and sad, after his father asked him what happened. He told him what I said. Apparently, this caused his father to giggle before he told his son that my reaction has been obvious all along and that he isn't surprised at all. Turns out the parents aren't the religious influence. It's the uncle on the father's side. Apparently, he told my boyfriend that the guests at the engagement party, it's a big deal with this culture with about 100 people. They come from everywhere and probably bring their whole household, the dog and the neighbors, will probably have a heart attack when they see a pale blonde fiancé without a headscarf. My boyfriend must have had a very deep conversation with this uncle about tradition and being the oldest son and all that stuff, basically brainwashing. Long story short, he is my ex-boyfriend now. His mother will come by tonight to get his stuff. Update 2. The future I had planned is gone, but I guess it was for the best. So here is what happened last night. My ex-boyfriend's mother came over to get his stuff. Some clothes, shoes, socks, books, his toothbrush and deodorant, stuff like that. She brought dinner. It was chicken with bulgur. This woman is a fantastic cook, and we sat down to talk. She told me some things I didn't know before. It's not the first time my ex messed up big time with a girl he wanted to marry. When he was 22, he was in a serious relationship with a very Western, very independent redhead, pale skin like me, not a Muslim drop of blood in her. They got along great, but when it came to the question of engagement, the uncle took the boy aside and told him that this wasn't working. If the girl wouldn't change her looks and her behavior, the relationship ended, and my ex-boyfriend's father got loud. He told his son that he needs to decide what he wanted. If he wanted to live a Western lifestyle, it would be fine, but if he wanted to have a traditional wife, he needs to find someone that is raised that way. Fast forward 4.5 years, and he started dating me. His father warned him not to mess it up again, and that was the last time he said anything about it. His mother hoped he would be smarter this time. The uncle is a very traditional man. His daughters both wear headscarves since puberty, so does his wife. He prays, he follows the rules, and since he is no son of his own, he kind of decided that my ex-boyfriend, the oldest son in his family, is like a son to him. About my almost mother-in-law, she wears a scarf herself. I asked her why she does, and she was a little embarrassed. She told me that she wasn't always wearing one when she was younger, but she started to get gray hair after her second son was born in her late 20s. And at some point, she decided that a scarf is cheaper than the salon, so she covered her head on and off. She got used to it at some point and then didn't go back. Strange, I know, but I haven't been in her situation, and it's not my right to judge her. After dinner, we packed my ex's stuff in 2 big shopping bags, and my ex-boyfriend's father came to help his wife carry the bags. He told me that he is sorry about his son's behavior, so that's it. I am single now. Do I hope he comes to his senses and reaches out to me sometime in the future? A little. Do I believe that will happen? No, at the moment we are no contact, and I think I will leave it at that for now. I don't know what I will do if he comes back. This is all so new, and my head spins from, forget him, to, but I miss him, to, but he lied, to why can't he just be normal again, to call him, and so on. Edit. I tried to contact him yesterday. That was when his mother picked up the phone. He didn't want to talk to me, and I respect that. At the moment, I don't really know if I would want to talk to him. I wouldn't know what to talk about. I am heartbroken and feel betrayed, and telling him that wouldn't make anything better and just result in a fight. Looking back, I'm glad his mother came to pick up his stuff. As much as I missed the good times with him, I think seeing him would have made this whole situation a lot harder for me. He wants the double whammy of a very diluted, pick-and-choose Islam, her contributing half the money on top of the house and kids being her responsibility, but also wearing a headscarf and being subservient to him despite contributing way more than 50%. Also, the traditional Muslim woman will have her entire family and community behind her if he does not act right, while the non-Muslim woman will have no Muslim family on her side that knows what's fair and isn't fair, which makes it more difficult to get them to act right towards her as a Muslim, as they would not really know what to expect or how to support her in that regard. Everything will be put away as, oh, that's Western values. They don't understand. I'm telling you, it's like this. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comment section. Thank you and see you in the next video.